Hello. Are you having a crisis today? Because I sure am. It's Krisis here to talk about new releases, omnibuses, comics in general, the internet, and today's already been quite a day, and it's only 10:30 in the morning here in New Zealand, where I'm coming to you from live. So I don't even know. How is your day going? I could really use hearing how some other... I haven't even seen my hair on my face. I'm seeing it now, and I have some corrections to offer, but let's see what the chat has to say. So, a lot of familiar faces, the phenomenal AC, a fifth of Jack Gaming, my good friend Tyler, you know who, Expose, Pity Ma, saying hello all, Sunday Fun Day with Krisis. Tyler saying no video. Well, that's no good. The screen is black. Well, that's not great at all. Okay, let's try again. I mean, I can see me. Can anyone else see me? I don't know. I'm talking. Can anyone see me? Okay, I guess we'll just try again. Now can we see me? I hope so, because I don't have many other recourses. I'm literally having a crisis right now. So hopefully everyone can see me now. Can I be seen and heard? James Abel, with my, not resolution, but just words of the year, resolve, repair, recover. I could have just freaked out. I would love to have the superpower to throw things onto the ground and have them explode like Master Shake, but that is not my blessing in life. So we've just got to work with what we've gotten today. Apparently, I'm now on video. So hello, everybody. I am totally going crazy today. I woke up at 5 o'clock to try to finish everything for the stream, and it just didn't get finished. So we're just going to do it as it, we're going to play it as it lays today, which is fine, because part of my whole resolve, repair, recover is you got to let go of this idea of perfection. I've done a lot of theater, a lot of music. I have a lot of ideas about how things should be rehearsed and work on stage. But you know what? Sometimes you can't rehearse it, and sometimes you got to just be in the moment. So I'm just here in the moment, a moment of crisis with you all. So let's just see who else is chatting, and then we're going to get underway. I am no Jedi saying hello to everybody. Elon Reese saying open my eyes, and that seemed to fix it. Yeah, if you have your eyes closed, that might be a reason you can't see me. Everybody just try restarting the eyes. I've had to restart the eyes a lot in the past few days because I've done so much reading. William Lee, we're going to do it live. Samantha Jane, I always make her day better. She says, I'm so happy. You certainly make mine better. It's nice to know that there are simpatico people who are Kiwis. I don't really have a lot of in-person Kiwi friends, and yet in the last week, I've hung out with friendly Kiwis twice in person, which for me is like an all-time record. So it's always nice to know that there are people that are in your same latitude or longitude that are friendly and then make your day better. Ryan Wilson saying, hope that I'm doing well. I'm better now that my ass is in the chair and I'm talking to you all. I can't like run around like a chicken with my head cut off any longer. Crushing on Krisis. Thank you so much, Rising Phoenix Railroad. I'm having a crisis, a literal crushing crisis this morning. Edwin Billiot saying saying it was your problem. No, I think the black screen was my problem. I think I had Photoshop on in the background, and when I go into the streaming zone and I still have Photoshop on, it doesn't want to talk to my camera, which is weird because I'm not doing anything with my camera in Photoshop, but that's just the way that it happens. Lance McNair saying all is well. Brian Bird saying there we go, presumably when I came onto video. Excellent. It's wonderful to see all of you, including Georgie Chimchinov. I want to say, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of you, but to remember how to say your name, in my head I go Chim Chimmery, which I'm sure you've been teased with. I've heard Peter Pumpkin Eater a million times, but so I'm trying to just ground the fact that I just stop after two Chim Chims and I just say Georgie Chimchimov. But it's requiring practice, and I will continue to get better because everybody deserves to have their name respected. Chris Brogan, I can see you here in the comments, and a fifth of Jack gaming, actually I was watching his channel earlier this week. Okay. Whew. So what do we do when we do the show? Well, gosh, I don't know, because I barely got my ass on camera in time today, as many things in my life are indicating right now. But here's what I know we're going to do. We're going to have a moment of crisis where I'm going to talk about something, some breaking news, some things that you may have just seen breaking on the Near Mint Condition channel just hours ago. I'm going to react to that live, no script. We're going to talk about my top 10 comics of 2025 so far, because there's been some shuffling after this week's comics. And then we're going to talk about all of the comics that were out this week, of which I've read only a very modest, I believe, 42, which is the answer to Life, the Universe, and Everything. But I was meant to read 659, or actually 62, because I hadn't counted the Marvel Digital Comics. I did not get there. But you know what? Not every week is perfect, and I still have a lot to say about a lot of comics. And maybe you have read some of the comics that I haven't read, because this tends, I'm learning, to be a little bit of a collaboration between all of you who read comics and me. Lance McNair, you know, if you were to put me on pause and go stream some Mary Poppins, this video will be here theoretically when you return. William Lee, talking about some kind of wrestling thing, which is foreign to me. You know, I used to watch wrestling as a kid, and I actually went to like a live WWE at the time, now WWE event. And so I have fond memories of it, but I liked it when it was a little more fanciful and like neon, and people brought snakes and coffins and things. Now, sometimes it seems like a lot of the wrestling has just really trended towards people in their underoos punching each other. I liked it when it was closer to superheroes or closer to drag, which are two things that neighbors very nearly. Mink 0029 is ready for this day. Brain tissue paper is here. Loving my new DC Finest collection. The rest are on the mail from, we'll send you these in 3 weeks whenever we remember to print a mailing label stock trades. I'm not trying to get in a fight. I love, they're nice people. They've sent me many thousands of dollars of books that I paid for. I don't get anything for free. But oh boy, did they hold your orders hostage lately. Because things are not truly in stock. But you know, it's a first world problem. And soon some of these books are going to have a lot more trouble crossing borders than they did previously. So let's just appreciate the books that we can have on our shelves. This week's favorite read, The Power Fantasy. Yes, it came out in trade this week. I can't wait to get to talk about new issues. It was my number 2 series of last year, but I'm trying to play by the rules and only talk about single issues. Now it's all long, oily haired dudes. I don't think you're talking about me. I hope not. So we're probably talking about wrestling there. Saz Murph talking about wrestling, but I didn't get to say hi to Saz Murph, so I'm doing that. Hello. Chris Brogan, was it the wrestling show at the Spectrum of the Wells Fargo? I'm old, Chris, so it was the Spectrum. And those are 2 stadium or arenas in Philadelphia. If you didn't know what I was talking about, in Logan Wayne, you like the cartoon era of the WWE. Exactly. Well, in that period, I loved cartoons, and I loved comic books, and I loved wrestling and video games. Like I like things that kind of existed in that heightened reality. And I always thought it was weird. There's that one guy who had been in the Olympics, and he was a wrestler, and then he came to the WWF. I'm sure you all know his name because he's like an all-star now. But I was like, I don't want like an Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler here. And that's ridiculous. I want to see living cartoons. So yes, I was into the cartoon era. So just as a reminder, I'm here for you live in video, but my website is crushingcrisis.com. It's always there. I just, thanks to the support of amazing patrons on Patreon, who are called Pledgenauts, by the way. They helped me upgrade the server a huge amount a couple of weeks ago, and it has made a huge difference. Not only is everything much faster, which is nice, but traffic is going up even more than it was already going up because it's faster and it can serve more traffic. So it made me realize like I was just losing traffic because the server just could not keep up with demand, which is a wild thing. So if you go to crushingcrisis.com, on the main page, I talk about new releases, but across the header, you can see all of my different section of collected guides. And if there's just this is the real way to use it. I know some of you are watching and you're like, we know you from YouTube. I don't know what this whole website thing is about. This is when you need it. You're like, I really want to read some Venom this week, and I want to start from when Flash Thompson was Venom. I see complete collections. They don't really line up with the original trade. Should I wait for the Omnibus? That is the perfect time to go to Crushing Crisis. Actually, Venom is a patrons only guide on Crushing Crisis, but there's hundreds that are not. And when you go to the guide, it has every issue that character has appeared in a suggested reading order. And it kind of explains where the different collections break across the reading order. So whether you're doing it digitally, you have it in collection, you're trying to find the guest appearances, it helps you read down that character. So that's the time that you should go and visit my website. And if you want access to every single guide guide on it. It's only $2 right now to get every single guide. It's $2 a month. So that's real easy to do. And if you only have $1 a month, you can pledge that and at least always have access to every X-Men thing I'm going to do, because that's how people found me and I want to respect that. So X-Men is always the most affordable. So before I do a Moment of Krisis, I will say, we're going to do an Ask Me Anything after that, but it's got to be fast because there's a lot of comics to talk about this week. So you can start asking things now, and I will see them after I do my Moment of Krisis, and I'll answer them. I will say, it's not truly Ask Me Anything, and I was talking about this a little bit before the chat started with Reaper. I can only talk about people who have consented to have their stories be talked about on the internet. So Kid Krisis, even though it sounds like I talk about her all the time, she's kind of given me permission to say the things that I say about her. And you will never hear me tell a Kid Krisis story that is not a Kid Krisis story that she wants to have shared. And other people in my life are similar. So if I tell a real life person story, it's because that's somebody who I know that those details are okay to share. And if I politely decline to tell a real life story about somebody that you're asking about, is because they kind of don't exist within that bubble. And I can only pop the bubbles that I'm allowed to pop. Okay, let's have a Moment of Krisis, shall we? We've got a big one to talk about today. We've got a powerful one that could shake your house, because it is a reprint of The House and Powers of X by Jonathan Hickman in oversized hardcover, which Marvel never does. They never reprint oversized hardcovers. They always change to Omnibus. This is literally unprecedented. I can't remember the last time it happened. And sorry, it's already hot. It's summer here in New Zealand, so you're going to see a lot of this today. And even bigger news that was just announced in Near Man Condition. We're getting a Dawn of X, Age of Krakoa X-Men Omnibus with every series in reading order. And it's only going to cover to like issue 8 of the initial series, because that's only how much you could fit in that book. It's probably going to be over 1,000 pages, which means for all of you who've been waiting, we're finally getting Fallen Angels in oversized hardcover. But let's take several steps back from the brink of getting out our credit cards and talk about why? What does this mean? Why is it happening? And let's start with something really basic. When Marvel releases a comic, see, I told you we're going basic. When Marvel releases a comic, they want to profit off of that comic. So do all indie creators. My favorite indie series I just caught up on, Local Man by Tony Fleeks and Tim Seeley, just had their last issue a couple months ago because they were just breaking even. That sucks for me and for them, because when you publish comics, you're not just trying to break even. You want the comics to pay for themselves. So when Jonathan Hickman was paired with the X-Men name, that was paying for itself in a big way. X-Men comics always sell and always beat their margin, especially the like main X-Men book. And Jonathan Hickman sells comics too, but of course, Jonathan Hickman cost money. And the artists that they had, I think it was Eule was doing a lot of the illustration, Sunny Go on colors. I mean, it was all-star teams on each one of these comics. Russell Dodderman was doing covers on Marauders, Marcus Toe was doing cover interiors on Excalibur. These were all big recognizable names, in addition to the writers, Tini Howard, Jerry Dugan, Brian Edward Hill, Ed Brazan. These were all people that were already known in the market, and that costs money. And so when Marvel puts out comic books, or decides to not put out comic books anymore, they're trying to turn a profit. And one of the things that Jonathan Hickman said when he left the X office midway through what was supposed to be his own run on Krakoa, it was that it was stretching on long enough, and I know I'm misquoting him here, that he was not confident that he was pulling in the amount of profit that he is meant to pull in for Marvel as their big name writer. That's why you see Hickman doing the stuff that he's doing right now, which is a totally other Moment of Krisis. The point being that Marvel's got to turn a profit on those initial issues. Everything after that, though, does not have to pay for all those things that the initial issues had to pay for all the creatives, the editorial team, all that stuff that produced that original issue. That's part of the expense of that original issue. And then later when they put out a trade or that oversized hardcover or that omnibus just gets to make a profit on itself, on basically the printing of itself and the assembly of itself, but not all of the creative that went behind it. When Marvel puts out a Silver Age omnibus of Spider-Man now, they're not trying to make back what they paid Stan Lee to write that issue of Spider-Man in 1963. That horse has already left the station. So, having said that, let's talk about this omnibus. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, it's not exactly what I wanted, which is something I say all the time. So I don't mean to just make fun of you, but we've already got a lot of those X-Men Krakoa series in oversized hardcover. So people have shelves, right, of X-Men. They did Marauders. They did a lot of them. And so a lot of people are like, well, we don't need another oversized hardcover of this same stuff that you almost all of has been an oversized hardcover. Where's the Immortal X-Men? Where's the X-Men Red? Where's all the weird miniseries? Where's, give us all of that, right? But those oversized hardcovers, Marvel releasing just one of them is not a promise that there's going to be more. They're releasing them because they're profitable, and they'll continue to release them until they are not profitable, and then they will stop releasing them. That's why we never got an oversized hardcover of just the 6 issues of Fallen Angels. That's why they stopped doing the Dawn of X and Reign of X and Trials of X and Destinies of X anthology trades. They were not making enough money on their own to sustain those lines. So part of me is like, I'm so sorry that you're not going to be able to complete your bookshelf. But just because you went all in on those earlier collections does not mean we all need to now hold hostage Marvel's collection announcements so that things line up with those. Those initial oversized hardcovers, they kind of just go out in the world because there's a demand to get stuff in deluxe format right now. Marvel has never promised, we're going to give you complete shelves of those. Everything's going to match in those. It's almost like a scam. It's a little bit of a pyramid scheme because Marvel never, ever tells you they're going to keep it in the same format. And we've seen in past years, the Daredevil oversized hardcovers, they never even finished that line, right? Some of the oversized hardcovers, there's like year gaps, and then maybe we'll get a final one. If you're buying those, you are buying them just to have an initial release format in oversized format, and you're not getting a promise that they're going to continue all of that in Omnibus. Now, that's a lot of rambling, maybe a little bit wild, because that is the day that I'm having. But now I want to come to this Krakoa Omnibus. It's in reading order. It's everything from the start. Are they going to be able to make it all the way to the end of Krakoa? Well, Omar and I both mapped that out, and we might do it on a future Map My X, but that would be between 10 and 12 volumes to do all of Krakoa, all inclusive, every series. Is Marvel definitely promising to do that? I think what we can tell from this being called Dawn of X Volume 1 is we're at least going to get through X of Swords. And guess what? There's a whole nother book worth of content between here and X of Swords. And guess what? That is also going to duplicate almost every original hardcover that you already bought if you were making that shelf. So you know what? You can skip these if you want to, unless you really wanted Fallen Angels in oversized hardcover. But this is a different line. And this is the thing I really need people to start understanding before they freak out. Marvel thinks of these things in different lines. They're not putting out just one thread of book, just in the same way that there was original trade paperbacks and then the anthology trade paperbacks that seeded this series in order. This omnibus line is about if you want Krakoa in reading order. And if it sells strongly enough, we will get 11 or 12 omnibuses of Krakoa in perfect reading order. If you instead prefer the individual creator omnibuses, then you are under no obligation to buy this, nor should this be wind up the only version of this material in oversized hardcover. Each one of those things is selling on their own, turning their own profit, and signaling to Marvel whether or not they should make more. But the reason this all-in-one Krakoa omnibus is so appealing is because it is going to collect everything. And that means that there's going to be some things like Fallen Angels that never had a chance of being an oversized cover elsewhere. So I guess the reason I'm talking about this, A, it's really exciting. You know that I do not let Marvel material from after 2015 into my collection. I read it digitally. I don't want it to fill my house. I don't want to have anybody to worry about it when I die hundreds of years from now. So I just read it digitally. But I am sorely tempted because not only is this going to be all-inclusive of Krakoa, but it's something that Marvel never really does in Omnibus, which is like thread multiple series together in an ideal reading order. Sometimes they do it in an event omnibus, but they very rarely do it for a line of books. So that's very exciting to me, and I am very tempted. Do I think you should buy this book? Here's what I'll say. Nothing really pays off for the first year of Krakoa. It's all set up. In fact, Hickman's actual title, X-Men 2019, is all set up for later stories. I've said this many times. And if you bought his Hickman omnibus, I think you were duped because those stories don't go anywhere. They all set up other things that will happen elsewhere in the line, later in the line, in other books, which is why, to me, I don't think it makes any sense to buy creator omnibuses of Krakoa. That Hickman omnibus is a crappy read, but maybe you bought it. Maybe you want things by book on your shelf. Maybe that's how your brain is organized. More power to you. So I'm excited because to me, this is the way Krakoa is meant to be read. Now, I had sat down, I had a long thing because I love Krakoa. I don't think X-Men needs to exist anymore. I think the mic got dropped, honestly. But I sat down and I had a long think. Would I really reread all of Krakoa? I only tend to buy the comics that I'm going to reread. I mean, you see me talk about Four Kids and Walk into a Bank all the time. I've reread that many times. I think I talk about Days of Sand a lot, which is a beautiful, beautiful graphic novel about the Great Depression Dust Bowl by Amy Amy DeJong. I've reread that several times. So the things that I get physically these days are the things that I think I'm going to reread a lot. And I've asked myself, am I going to really reread Jerry Duggan's Marauders? Am I going to really read Jonathan Hickman's X-Men? And God bless us if these books make it even farther. Am I going to read Steve Orlando's Marauders? Am I going to reread Realm of X? Not necessarily, but I do like the idea of having all of Krakoa all in one place. It meant a lot to me. I would love the idea of seeing the stories interwoven in the order they're meant to. I think the mapping is going to really be what counts for a lot on this book, and we just won't know until we know. They say it's in the right reading order, and in those early issues, we already have a pretty decent reading order. It's not the reading order from the anthology trades. They were just basically order of release, which kind of sort of was reading order, but it wasn't perfected. So I think Marvel is probably at least going to give us enough omnibuses to get us to the end of the Hickman part. And that's going to be about 5-ish books. Don't quote me. Tune into a future Map My X. Whether we get it all the way to the end to meet up with this Rise of the Powers of X, Fall of the House of X omnibus on the other side, I cannot tell you. Whether the mapping will be good enough, I cannot tell you. Whether you should buy those, I cannot tell you. Whether I will buy those, I cannot tell you. But the thing that is attractive to me is to have a completed set of what to me is the X-Men story. And I don't think I would ever need to buy an X-Men story again. So I'm undecided and I don't have anything definitive. I've seen the same announcement video on Near Mint Condition that the rest of you have seen, which I'm sure by now a few of you have posted the link to and I'll highlight in the comments. But that is my moment of crisis. And now we're going to move on to Ask Me Anything. But first, let me see what people have said. And you know I'm not great at this, y'all. All right, I'm going to start in the bottom, move up, and then come back to the bottom. Yeah, Tyler is one of the few people I know who has a really cogent, coherent mapping of Krakoa. He has not shared it with the public. At one point, I was going to have it on my guides, but it was a big undertaking, and I didn't want to just take Tyler's work, although Tyler is one of my good friends, and we could probably negotiate some kind of fair offer for that. But yeah, the release order is not the mapping in Krakoa. Every so often, like during the Hellfire Gala, during certain periods, during X of Swords, during 2024, release order really was the mapping order, but not always. Oh boy, maybe I do have to start at the top because y'all are deep into this conversation now. Okay, Kurt Angle was the Olympic wrestler who I was thinking of from the WWF, or Angel. Could be Angle, could be Angel. Logan Wayne confirming Krisis hates Kurt Angle. No. Apparently it's Angle. Okay. Lance says, I've still been following my X-Men guide. The next issue I'm reading is Life to Have, one of the greatest X-Men issues. That period is great. It's probably the one period I really like John Romita Jr. in like the late 180s and early 190s. And wrestling is not all dudes anymore. You know, back in the day, I used to watch the actual Glorious Ladies of Wrestling, Glow, that the Netflix show was loosely based upon, but I don't think it was based upon the actual wrestlers. And I loved that. But they didn't have toys and video games of them. So I settled for toys and video games of the WWF. But yes, at that time, I really wanted to see women wrestling. Now I have drag, you know, but, but women wrestling is cool too. Okay. You can start AMAing. I'll just go until I run out of stuff, and then we'll talk about comics. Had you Crushing Guys to look up the Cloak and Dagger timeline today because New Warriors Omnibus 2 is missing a table of contents. Ooh, that's no good. Cloak and Dagger was a really tricky guide because there's two of them. So I have a lot of tools. I have a lot of like arcane wizardry in the back end that like spreadsheets that spit out numbers, and you put two lists and it compares the list. I've built so much stuff. I probably spent as much time building tools as I do making guides, which is wild to say. And Cloak and Dagger was one of the original guides that led me to do that because I really needed a way to like compare and contrast two characters. And the New Warriors guide is similar because the New Warriors guide, which was one of my first Patreon guides ever at the end of 2016, when I was still living in America, it actually tracks all of the major New Warriors other than Nova because he has his own guide. And at the time, I didn't have any tools to help me organize a guide or research a guide like that. So I had to build like new tools in order to build that guide. Fun fact. What do I think about the New 52 Wonder Woman is a good place to start? Absolutely not. New 52 Wonder Woman, Rigor Erectus, it's a particular mythology. Brian Azzarello and Clef Chang are saying, let's take a very Greek mythology approach to Wonder Woman, which is great, and many authors have in the past. I don't think it so much tracks to the character we know Diana to be, and I think it's very self-contained, and I think if you're reading all of Wonder Woman, it's really easy to just go from pre-Flashpoint to post-New 52 and skip it entirely. It's almost like an Elseworld to me. I'm not saying it is officially. That's just how I read it. if you like that idea of a Wonder Woman that's just kind of works on its own, has a big mythological story, isn't necessarily a character you need to be familiar with or know a lot of backstory to because the New 52 kind of started everything from scratch, then it is perfect for you. I personally didn't really like it because it didn't feel like a Wonder Woman story. Like it felt like Elseworlds to me. So here's that breaking news on New Mint Condition. You know, Omar, when he first puts out a video, titles it with like a vague title. So that's the title you have to look for today. One Marvel OHC reprint and one new Marvel Omnibus. Then if you're looking for it weeks from now, he will change it to announced Dawn of X. You know, you got to play the game on YouTube, which I'm terrible at doing. I was looking at like tips for good thumbnails. I'm like, do I care? Do I care if anybody sees my thumbnail and thinks it's good and clicks the video? I just want to talk to you all. Right? But eventually I have to worry about that. For now, I'm just doing my crappy thumbnails that I'm doing. Marvel printing money from near-mint announcements of this reprint. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and this I forgot to say this in the Moment of Krisis. People are like, why wouldn't they put House of X and Powers of X in an omnibus? Because the omnibus will sell regardless, and House of X and Powers of X is evergreen. That's like saying, why don't they collect Watchmen with the Doomsday Clock? Because Watchmen will always sell, and Doomsday Clock will sell to the people that want it, and the slice of comic nerds who want them both in one book is so small that you can just make them buy the separate books. So why would you put House of X and Powers of X in an omnibus if you can just always sell House? It's eternally going to be on the best list of X-Men comics. When the movie comes out, every article you read on the internet is going to say, and if you really want to be an X-Men insider and know all the things that comic book fans know about X-Men, you should read Jonathan Hickman's modern classic, House of X, Powers of X. And then they will reprint it again and it will sell even more. Fallen Angels. That Fallen Angels is going to come up in one of my pull list discussions today, so that's why I mentioned it. I'd stop buying Omnis, but you know, as soon as you get out, Lance J. McNair, they suck you back in. Edwin Billett, I would have preferred having Hawkspock in the Omnibus. Well, I just addressed that point. Saz Murph, my biggest concern about picking up the Krakoa Omnis is the estimate of 10 to 11 Omnis. I agree. The overall investment around 1K and interest dipped out of extras after X of Swords. Well, the positive thing is I don't think they're going to map them to just end on egregious cliffhangers. So just buy the ones that you want up until the point that you don't like it anymore. For me, I only really like it until X of Swords. No, I didn't like it at all until X of Swords. I really didn't like it when the line started. That's why we started doing the videos at X of Swords. Then I stopped liking it again for a little while until Gillen got there. And then I liked it again. So am I going to buy like Omnibus 3, Omnibus 7, 8, and 9? I don't know. Undecided. Dean Winchester for one of my favorite shows, Supernatural. By the way, I think the big announcement coming from Marvel is definitely an Akira Omnibus. Oh, shit. Oh, is it too early? I'm never sure how early in the stream I can curse before YouTube punishes me. I would buy that. Because Marvel's colors for Akira were unique. And I mean, I do like black and white comics and I would read it in black and white, but the option to have it in color is pretty wild. But Akira is what, like 36, 37 issues? I know we did this for the Marvel poll last year. I just don't have it on the top of my head. And the issues are like 60 pages each. So I'm not going to dare open my calculator app right now because you never know what crashes when I start opening things in the middle of the stream. But just doing the math, you could only have 18 issues per omnibus, probably not even. So it's probably 2 or 3 omnibuses. That is super back of napkin, not official. But so we're going to be signing up for a lot if they're going to do it. Glad Hawkpox was kept separate. I felt that Dawn of X may have suffered. Plus Hawkpox on its own is like more than 400 pages. So that would have really changed the equation of what the omnibus would have felt even lesser in that. And also, I don't think you need to read House and Powers of X and then immediately continue to X-Men 1. I don't know how satisfying that is because nothing really pays off House of X and Powers of X right away. It doesn't really start getting paid off until way deeper in the run. So I think to put it in the omnibus actually would be kind of unsatisfying. George Chimchimov says, I think they reprinted the OHC since Hawkspox is well regarded. Yes. Okay. So this was while I was talking and everybody was saying their things. One Wheelchair X. Hello, my friend. This is one Omni announcement I'm actually considered double dipping for. I already own the X-Men and New Mutants and floppies, Hawkspox in trade, but the thought of Krakoa Omnis is so tempting. Heavy breathing, right? That's how I feel. Like that gif of the cat that's heavy breathing. That's how I feel when I think about that. Tyler thinks X of Swords will be reprinted as a separate OHC. I am not convinced. X of Swords is 25 issues, but X of Swords had some prelude material and also some after material. I think it's a really awkward thing to map around. There's absolutely 50 issues before X of Swords right now. I mean, Tyler knows this. I'm talking to the rest of you. Then there's 25 issues of X of Swords, but then there's like 78 issues between there and the end of the original Hellfire Gala, and then like another 50 plus issues between there and the end of Inferno. So even if they were to put out X of Swords on their own, it doesn't actually help. It doesn't fix the mapping. It actually might help the mapping more if they cushion it with things on either side and make it like a really good volume, because X of Swords did have outcomes, especially in Excalibur and X-Men. So I think you would want those few issues after X of Swords in the omnibus, but map my X to come. Fallen Angels is a necessary evil for that New Mutants and oversized Rod Reese's. I don't know, but we love him and we love his art. When it comes to Inferno, X of Swords, Sins of Sinister, are they going to replenish those OHCs too, or merge them into the Omnis? Isn't that the big question? I think you would have to put Inferno into whatever the last Hickman Krakoa omnibus is, and Inferno is only 4 issues, so that's easy. Sins of Sinister is harder because it's like standalone, and it kind of matters, but it kind of doesn't matter, and it's like, what, 11 issues, and some of them are oversized, so that really could be intense. I did not catch how much it's going to be. Omar may have said that on the stream, Zero Zaku. I literally was scrambling to get ready from 5 o'clock this morning, my time, which is 11 o'clock this morning, Omar time. So I like opened YouTube, saw it, and was like, ah, and then I just had to like keep reading comic books to get ready for this. All right, let's see if there's any actual AMAs. One, in my opinion, was the best and worst title of the Krakoa era. Best was Immortal X-Men. I'm a Gillen stan. Like, I'm shameless. There's nothing that's ever going to make me happier than that. I also really liked X Factor, if we could just forget that issue 10 ever existed. Worst title was Orlando's Marauders. Fallen Angels is readable. It's not great, but you can read it. Steve Orlando's Marauders, God bless him, he's turned into a really strong author the past couple of years. That was the fire he had to walk through to get to Scarlet Witch, maybe, but oh my God, that is the one book that when I'm asking myself, would I buy all these omnibuses? I'm like, oh, but then you would own Steve Orlando's Marauders. No hate, Steve. I've really come to enjoy many of your comic books, just not that one. I really, Edwin and Billy, don't pay a lot of attention to comic book sales, so I did not see that Absolute Wonder Woman 4 outsold both Detective and Superman. It's surprising to me because I think there's a lot of energy around both of those, but I think Kelly Thompson is huge. I think people like good takes on Wonder Woman that are a little more martial, and so to have her using dark magic and stuff is attractive. And also I think a lot of people got disillusioned with the Tom King run on Wonder Woman, and so they were just looking for another run to one through. There are I don't regret skipping many omnibuses because I just don't read that many omnibuses, and I got all of that Cloak and Dagger and trade paperback. I do kind of wish that I'd bought the omnibuses. I don't know if there's enough material for a Cloak and Dagger omnibus volume 3. Those two take them pretty far. They don't really any solo series in the 2000s until like 2010. Dagger has a one-shot. Then they're on Dark X-Men. Then I think their next series together is like a digital series in 2018. My guide has all of this. I'm trying to do it off the top of my head. I don't know. I mean, first of all, they only put those omnibuses out because they had a TV show. But I don't know if there's enough material to do more omnibuses. Okay. Derek Tyler logging in and saying, good evening. Good evening, Derek. Tiger Eyes Dawn of X makes 15 of the top 60 most wanted and 4 of the top 10. That's the other thing. So Tiger Eyes is the king. He's the sovereign of knowing what the demand is for Marvel omnibuses because he's been in this game for over a decade. And people are like, people don't even want the X-Men omnibus. Oh, yeah? Well, like, thousands of voters on a poll that went across the entire comic book internet to try to gauge interest in this says that you're wrong. So I would trust the Tiger Eyes data. It's not perfect, and it's a poll of people who have a huge vested interest in omnibuses. So if you made the poll go wider to a broader audience of people, they might not think, ooh, Krakoa and Reading Order, and vote for that. But as for the people that are on their day one ordering the omnibuses from DCBS and IST, whatever, they want it. Okay, now I think we're into some questions. Next, Imaginot said, meant to ask in addition to his question. Oh no, I must have missed another question. Well, that ship has sailed from the dock. On Omar's Krakoa announcement vid, he asked me a question in the comments there. Do I think Marvel's chosen mapping will affect the subsequent Docs event titles? Oh, well, we kind of sort of just covered that a little bit. Orlando's Marauders is Orlando trying to do all of Krakoa in his way and doing it badly. Yeah, I think there's certain authors, and this would be me. There are certain authors that when they get on one of these legendary franchises like X-Men, that they are trying to do everything everywhere all at once. And it just doesn't turn out okay because This light is blinding me. It doesn't. What happens if I turn it off? Oh no. And so I think they try to do everything all at once, and I think that's what Orlando is trying to do. Okay, let's get to some actual questions. Do you think JMD Mateus Spectacular Spidey Omnibus? No, I don't. Spidey is not one of my omnibus ones. I'm in on the Epic line, and that is all I buy for Spider-Man. I had thick trades before. Like I have every Spider-Man trade there ever was before there were epics, and now I'm double dipping a lot of them in epics, but of course it's also filling in a lot of stuff too. I've never read that run, and I famously have like an ongoing bit where I'm like, why do people like it? But it didn't start as a bit. I literally was like, you're just picking random issues of Spectacular Spider-Man. What is wrong with you? Then I learned that DeMatteis is like beloved and his Spider-Man was great, and et cetera, et cetera. I still haven't read it though. Thoughts on Suicide Squad Omnibus? If it's the original Tiger, the original 1987, heck yeah, it's really good. I mean, you gotta love immediately post-crisis 80s comics. If you've never read that kind of 80s stuff, you should maybe read 1 or 2 issues of it online to be sure. But John Ostrander is one of the best that was writing at that point. I mean, him, Wolfman, Claremont, Grell. I think there was a certain echelon of authors who were writing really interesting literature that happened to be superheroes. And I do think that wasn't quite Vertigo, like just good literature as superheroes. And I do think that Suicide Squad does fit into that, but you have to make sure that you like that era of comics. George Chipchov said, given that I'm reading everything past 2015 digital, do I have a specific point? Yeah, Secret Wars. It was absolutely Secret Wars. I was so angry when Secret Wars happened because it was dumb and I hated it. I have to stop saying dumb. I said dumb too much last week. We didn't even, you know what it is? Craig Krisis is not allowed to say the word dumb in the house because we're always like, there's probably a better word to express what you mean. So I think I take out the fact that I can't say dumb ever by saying it 100 times per stream, but it's same rules apply, right? It's not a descriptive word. Anyway, Secret Wars was like, it's the end of the Marvel Universe. And sometimes when a company tells you that, you say, okay, you trust them. And so I trusted them and I dropped everything. I didn't start reading Marvel again until like 2017 when we moved to New Zealand. I'd not read a single Marvel title, I don't think. I mean, my Twitter might prove the lie of that, or my webpage, but I think I stopped reading Marvel. And all of 2016, I was just reading back catalog stuff. And then in 2017, the buzz and Rebirth was so good, I started reading Rebirth. And then towards the end of 2017, I was like, oh, maybe I'll read some Marvel. And by that point, I was here and I had already missed like 2 years of trades. So I didn't want to try to get them all shipped here. And also, I kind of made the decision at the end of Secret Wars by looking at how big my collection was grown. I was like, the collection can't keep getting bigger physically every year. I already have so many rooms in my house that are just comic books. At a point, I just have to give it up. And that's when I asked myself that question. I looked at my stack of Marvel Now books, which I read every Marvel Now book in paper. And I said, am I ever going to reread all those? And then when I had that realization of like, no, then I was like, okay, well, we need to rethink things. Richard Fearing, I'm always happy when you're here. You're my wonderful soul. Well, maybe some days. I'm excited for the announcement of Dawn of X. Hope I've had a wonderful weekend. Well, I've been peak stressed, but I brought it upon myself. A lot of work, a lot of CK work. That's when around the house when I talk to Kid Krisis and she's like, what do you have to do today? I'm like, well, I have some work and I have some CK work. Or sometimes I'll say I have some work, right? Depending on how stressed it is. That's how many works I add to the list. So that's work cubed. So it's been a really stressful weekend with work, but I got to play some fun board games with friends yesterday, including this one that I'm addicted to, Red Dragon Inn. Oh, so fun. It's like after your D&D characters get done their D&D campaign and they're all in the inn afterwards buying each other drinks and you get knocked out by drinking too much, taking too much damage, or running out of money. Just a really fun card game around the table. And every card is written in character for the character. So even if you're not a role play person, you just read the card and it puts you in character. It's really fun. So of course, me being me, I went on the internet when I got home and I was like, can I get all of this here in New Zealand? It would cost $800 American dollars to get it all in New Zealand, which in New Zealand dollars is so much more than $800. It's like 1,350 New Zealand dollars. So I'm probably just going to continue hanging out with those friends rather than get that game. But that was a nice breather. Zero Zaku says, Krisis, what are some of the most underrated X-Men runs or team books that I think aspiring comic book writers should read to learn from? I'll give the answer I always give first, which is Greg Pak's Storm from 2014. Just really, sometimes the best X-Men books happen out of the spotlight. I would say the same about Elliot Kalan's Spider-Man and the X-Men from 2014. Sometimes they really fly under the radar. So I think what you want to do is look at a lot of side books. Look at Alan Davis's Excalibur, starting with Excalibur 42. Sometimes the main books have to hold so much weight and have so many popular characters in them that it's really, really hard for them to be great. But I would also say if you're an aspiring comic book writer, read bad comics. Like read Chuck Austen's X-Men, which I'm not saying is bad, but is hated. And to understand why is it hated and why did it work? Why did he do some of the things that he did at the time, right? Eric Skywalker says, I'm pretty excited about the announcement. Unfortunately, I do have the X-Men, right, the Hickman Omni. But you know, sell it. People don't know yet that this other thing is happening, so just sell it now. Okay. Richard Fearing, what are my thoughts on the Exterminators from Leah Williams? It was fun. I mean, Leah Williams doing grindhouse bloody vampire stuff is fun. I like Leah Williams for her brain. So I like when her stuff is heavier. I loved her X Factor for that reason. When she does that lighter stuff, it's kind of like, haha, like her Gwenpool, which should be in the X-Men Omnibus line. I'm like, haha, but I don't really feel it. I like big brain Leah Williams better. Tall Purry. Oh gosh, we got to talk about new comics at some point, y'all. Following up an earlier question, Krisis was my favorite Wonder Woman run. I love Perez. I love that brief run that came after James Robinson. Who is it by? It was before Mariko Tamaki did. It wasn't Kelly Sue DeConnick. It was G. Willow Wilson. I really like that run. I really like Bronze Age Wonder Woman. Ross Andrew was on some of that, but I mean, I like a lot of Wonder Woman. The list of Wonder Woman I don't like is smaller. I don't love John Byrne Wonder Woman. I don't like New 52 Wonder Woman. Rucka's second Wonder Woman when he came back for Rebirth was a little inside baseball, I think, and it wasn't as fun as it could have been. But like I try to love Wonder Woman, right? Derek Tyler mapped. There is, and Derek mapped it. Maybe that was the Cloak and Dagger Omnibus. Okay. I'm gonna do one more and then we're gonna continue. How many years do you think it'll take to print all of the Krakoa era? I hope print 2 or 3 a year. I think they would print 2 or 3 a year. I do. So I think we're looking at a 4 to 5 year project if it sells. I think, again, I suspect, no insider info, restraining order at Marvel still in effect. I don't think that they have plans to go past Dawn, and they'll see how this does. And because people keep telling them it's going to sell the hugest amount, it's the X-Men era everybody wants. And I think if the sales prove that sales can do anything, and then we'll get all of them. And if the sales are soft, then we'll have to beg for them on the poll every year. My neck is sweating so much. Luckily, summer's almost over, so this won't continue to be a problem. Okay. That's it for AMA. I'm supposed to say that smash the hit, like, subscribe, fun, love me. But you know what? You're here because you already did that. So yes, it does help me and it helps the channel, but I just want to talk to you. I don't need to do all that transactional stuff necessarily. So that's it for that. But if you do it, I love you even more. So that was it for Ask Me Anything. Okay. I feel like I'm kind of in the zone now. I needed that 40 minutes because I was so turned around by everything that was happening that I really wasn't ready to talk. And then right before the stream, just as I was like getting ready to start the stream, I broke a string on my guitar. So I don't know if we're going to get to play out today. I'm not sure. Okay. So now we're going to do my top 10 comics of the year. What is this, you ask? Well, I basically have a huge spreadsheet where I keep track of every single comic that I read. And then I kind of know their scores. And I don't just look at the average score, but I look at a weighted average based on how many issues there have been. And also I do a weighted average. If you know what Net Promoter Score is, which is a measure that companies use to see if more people are supporters than detractors. Basically, that's why they ask you on a call, like, oh, how do you rate us 1 to 10? They only care about 9s and 10s, sometimes 8s. And anything that's a 6 or lower is actually a negative score. Even if you give a 6 and you're like, what? 6 is like above the middle. No, 6 to a company that's doing that is actually negative, and they combine those to see what the Net Promoter Score is. And so you want more 9s and 10s than you have 6s and down. So I actually do a Net Promoter Score for every comic that I read because, again, I'm a crazy person. And that is how I kind of tell what my true favorites are. So my favorites definitely favor books that have more issues that I fall in love with. A book that's always 3.5 out of 5, like running that average, actually will never rise into my top 10 because you need to have a couple things that make me go crazy with lust and desire for comic books. So let me now to the stage, my screen. And so now we're going to do my power ranking. Oh, you know, so the thing is, if I put that below, then we're not going to see it, right? I do rewatch the stream every week. I'm not only a yammerer, I am also a consumer of my yammering. So here's the top 10, and this number 10 book is new. Oh wait, this is the thing where I have to be all the way over here so you can see me. It's Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu by Jen McKay. I think the last 2 issues have been phenomenal. The twist in issue 3 was so amazing. And then the art in this issue, we'll talk about later, loved it. So this is snuck into my top 10 as we get through the first month of the year. Then we still have Welcome to Mania, a wonderful Disney-fied magical hotel. We have the Time Variance Authority, me liking crazy time shit. What is that about? But I do like it. Perry Prez's art is beautiful. Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Waters and Hayden Sherman. I love it. The New Gods, Evan Cagle's art is just a total blockbuster. Never seen anything like it. So on board for this Ramsey story. Nice House by the Sea by James Tinian, Alvaro Martinez Bueno, and Jody Belair has become my entire personality. Living Hell by Caitlin Yarsky, which is some of the best cartooning and storytelling I've ever seen in a comic book. Absolute Superman number 3 by Jason Aaron, which is Hope Core. Jason Aaron does Hope Core, but wait, we have a new number 2. Dust to Dust by J.G. Jones and Phil Bram, which I will talk about today, is my number 2 series of the year, and I bet you don't even know about this comic, I bet. And still at number 1, FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick from Dark Horse Comics. So that is my top 10 of the year. So now we're going to do, oh, you know what? I did the AMA before the top 10 today. I don't usually do that, do I? Okay, so now we're going to talk about this week's new releases. And there were so many, and I did not get through all of them, and we're just going to have to be okay with that. But we're still going to talk about them, and surely some of you are reading some of the ones that I am not reading, right? Surely that must be the case. So I am going to hope that in some of these instances, you have read more than me, and so you can maybe come through with some information. Why can't I make my window bigger? I don't know why. All right, well, we'll work on that in the background. So standard rules apply. I have a fixed amount of time to talk about each of these series. And then when my time is up, sometimes I keep talking about them. So it's really, there's no rules, there's no gods, and there's no masters. Okay. And just because this takes so much time and attention to do all at once, I don't actually get to see your comments as I go, but I stop every few books to do that. Tull Perry says for net promoter scores at their company, 8 is a negative. Yeah. Well, usually net promoter score, we're not talking about just like Uber or Lyft or whatever ratings. There we know that if you don't get a 5 stars, you're screwed. Or like customer service agents. I'm talking about at the end of a call when they say, how likely would you be to recommend our company? That's where they're getting net promoter score from. And in that, usually 7 and 8s are just neutral. Like 8, because they figure if you gave an 8, that it probably wouldn't be good enough that they would recommend that company. So, and so that's why. Maybe I'll do a whole lesson. You know, I used to think I was going to do more YouTube about like what I do professionally, like data analytics and like communications and SEO and stuff. And then it kind of just turned into comic book. But originally my name was the channel. And the reason that was I thought I was going to talk about that kind of stuff more. So if we ever, I guess if there's ever anything interesting that comes up and you really want to hear me hold forth about it, we could have like a crisis on corporate communications and talk about those things. I don't know why my window won't get any friggin' bigger. Single page. All right, well, we're just going to go with it. We got to just move forward. That's how life works. So let me share my screen. Entire screen. Share. And you'll learn that as I continue to let you in and see my screen, I always have NASA stuff as a background on my computer. I always have a beautiful nebula that every single technical device I have is a nebula in the background. I don't know. Maybe this is just too low res, this one. And let me just go a little deeper to one that I know is high res, like this one. Well, let me make it bigger. No, I don't know. My computer's revolting against me today, y'all. Well, but I want to show the timer. It's just such a bummer. All right, hold on. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, let's see if I just reopen it. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's what we need to do. Okay. No, that was the top 10. I know, I'm being silent on air. Y'all, if you understood how stressed I was this past week, I mean, you do, and I'm so happy you're here. And it really matters to me, and it helps me de-stress. But let me tell you, oh, it worked. Sometimes all you have to do is restart. Crap. Hooray. Okay, we're into it now. Everything's wonderful. No more complaining. See? All that I needed to do was reopen it. Okay, here we go. Now let me add to the stage and share my screen. Perfect. Okay, let's go. Well, I can tell you that I did not actually read 2000 AD this week because I didn't get through all my pulls. And as we know, 2000 AD is my reward for getting through all my pulls. I read Alligator Loki because it was free, and why not? But there's no jokes. I don't know how many more times I can say this. Like, I guess I'll start the timer. So this was an issue of Alligator Loki where he's drawing pictures of alligators as superheroes, and then Loki takes pity on him, so he transports him to a magical realm where all of the superheroes are alligators, but then a giant Loki kicks him out of that realm, and then he comes back and Thor has a warm towel waiting for him. Where is the haha? I don't know, but great. So this is called, I don't know what it's called because the head is over top of the freaking title. It's called something that starts with an A, and it's from Zion Studios, and I didn't pull it. This was Astonishing X-Men. Astonishing X-Men is one of Marvel's online-only comics, along with the other two astonishing titles we're about to talk about. This is by Steve Orlando with art from Francesco Archidiacono and colors from Carlos Lopez, letters by Travis Lanham. This was kind of marginal. The thing is, I feel like Orlando has really established this brand recently where he's figured out how to rein in his tendency to over narrate, to use it to his advantage. In Scarlet Witch, he did it so that he narrates in the second person. We know that I love that. In the Avengers Assemble series that came right before this, he kind of did it where he broke each mission up into a specific one-shot story, and so it made them feel really substantial. He's not doing his narration here, but he is doing a lot of character talking, and I think in a short internet-only title like this, to have the characters talk as much as they are, it's lacking in fun. They're narrating all of their actions as they're acting, and it's not, these digital books just have to click and move so fast, and I'm starting to doubt we're going to get that from Orlando on these books. And I didn't always love Orlando writing X-Men Unlimited, which was the previous X-Men digital only book. So hopefully he gets there. I'm always rooting for everybody, especially people that Marvel have given almost a decade of extra chances. Okay, now we are on to Astonishing Spider-Man. So Astonishing Spider-Man have been up and down on. Writer Scott Aukerman has proven that he's better at writing the Spider-Man stuff than the personal stuff. And this also is art by Julian Shaw, colors from Ceci de la Cruz, and letters from Joe Sabino. It was fun. I mean, it was a fight. It quips and thips. I kind of like that Aukerman is playing with this idea of this female mercenary who has a spider gear, so she's just calling her, and she has some powers, and she's calling herself Webhead, and Spider-Man shows up, and he's like, that's my nickname. What are you doing? And she's like, what? What else do you want me to call myself? All you spider people took them already. You know what? Those are the kind of quips that I'm looking for in the middle of the spider fight. Keep it up. So next we have Astonishing X-Men, and this is by Tim Seeley, who it is well established that I love. And it is also with art by, this is the one with the really small text I can never read, Eduardo something Bino. It's too small for me to read. And colors from KJ Diaz and letters from Clayton Cowles. This started 2 issues ago. It's like a little Black Tom caper. This one is kind of just got some in-between action. It actually has some really fun Captain America. Captain America, somebody, they say, oh, he was in this bar that burned down in Brooklyn. The cop says, "Muty, I hear." And Captain America says, "We don't use that term, Captain. It's offensive." Because you know what? Captain America is the kind of person who would have said that maybe one day, but he doesn't say it anymore. And he certainly doesn't say it with the hard T, Muty. Anyway, so this is just Captain America and Juggernaut both trying to get to Black Tom. It has this brief moment of discontinuity for me because Captain America reacts to Juggernaut like, "Oh, you villain." But the rest of the Avengers, not with Captain America, but the main Captain Marvel team, just had dinner with the X-Men in Alaska, and they know Juggernaut's on Scott's team. So does Cap not have that intel? I don't know. Just took me out of it for a second. Now we come to Avengelyne, this is I'm going to put the timer up even though I didn't read this. As far as I know, this was a direct reprint of the original Avengelyne #1 from the 90s. This was a Maximum Press Rob Liefeld comic book when he started to break from Image. And I have a ton of the originals. I was thinking about adding this to, I have every Wildstorm comic ever. I have every Top Cow comic ever. I have my imprints that I have everything ever. I didn't try to do Todd McFarlane Productions or the Savage Dragon comic because they mostly were just one comic. I focused on the ones that have lots of different titles and continuity in the 90s. And I was doing this as I was getting ready to move to New Zealand, literally. And this is a true story. I had to chase the moving truck down the street to put the last trade paperback that got shipped to me into the moving truck. At that time, I was thinking about doing all of Extreme Studios from Rob Liefeld because I loved them at the time. And I think he's a great idea guy. I truly mean that unironically. And I was going to get all of Avengelyne. And then they announced it's in development for a movie. And all of a sudden, everybody was speculating on these 90s issues that you could have gotten for 10 cents a week before. We're going for like $10, $20, $30. People were CG seeing them. So I never got it. But the thing is about Liefeld in the 90s, he had a lot of starts and he didn't really finish anything. So it's kind of disappointing. And even if you go back to read the stuff, lots of good ideas to start. But if you're the kind of person who wants a complete story, no Rob Liefeld Extreme Maximum Press. None of them told complete stories. Okay. So now we have another one that I didn't read, Avengers Academy, Marvel's Voices. I actually read 5 or 6 issues of it this week. We know that I love this title, and I told you I will catch up when I catch up because I'm not going to speed through it. Babs from Ahoy Comics. That I haven't been reading this. I don't know why. This looks hilarious to me, like a bunch of bards, including a lizard and something like singing to an adventure. Maybe it's like a D&D kind of riff. All I know is that, oh, you know why? I know why I'm not reading it. Garth Ennis. I don't think anything's wrong with Garth Ennis. I don't think Garth Ennis is a bad person. I've learned that I will always dislike a Garth Ennis indie comic. I've tried many times over. I've never liked a single one. So if I see his name, I say, go with God and just let him do his own thing. And we move forward with life. Okay. I really wanted to read this. Mike Barron is like having a comeback. He's like, let me write some comics again. So this is from First Comics. It's called Badger, Mad Monkey, Shock and Roll. I just saw this cover and I'm like, this is absurd. It's this super badger in like kung fu pants fighting pirates. I'm in. But then I could not find it digitally anywhere. I know these old dudes like Mike Barron are probably primarily selling to old dudes that are in trolling through the back of previews, so long as it continues to exist, to hunt down these comics. But have a care for the medium old people who want to read your thing digitally. I would have bought this sucker for $7 on Amazon if it was there. Couldn't find it. Okay, moving on to Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween Noir Edition. Could you put possibly more words into this title? This is just a black and white and color ink wash version of Batman #1, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, which came out in the end of 2024. I have not caught up in this title, but I probably will if they put out another issue. I don't know. Is it done yet? I haven't been following it, but I'm not going to go just read the black and white issue. Now we come to Black Coke by Kelly Thompson and Meredith McLaren and Becca Carey, my favorite letterer these days. Here's the thing about this book. I caught up on all of it this week. I had previously read it because I support Kelly Thompson on Substack, and she posts her indie comics for you to read on Substack. You don't even have to continue to buy them. So I actually read all of this via Substack. I didn't have to go and get it on Comixology. Meredith McLaren does art really similarly to Chris Bacalo, modern cartoony Chris Bacalo. And one of the things she does is she just draws people's outlines and she doesn't always give them facial features. That is one of my #1 pet peeves in a comic book. I don't care how small that little person's head is off in the distance. I want to see 2 little dots of eye on them. So to have this top panel where there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of her characters and there's no facial expressions, in my brain, when I read a panel like that, my brain just goes, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Like, I hate it. It makes me irrationally Hulk rage. And I don't think that Meredith McLaren has the clarity of cartooning to portray the amount of in-jokes and action and humor in Kelly Thompson's script. I'm going to talk for another minute about this. I hate to talk badly about a Kelly Thompson comic. I'm her supporter on Substack. I truly love her. And in an indie world, you pick your collaborator. Like, she did this with Meredith McLaren because she wanted to work with them. They worked together on, it's right here, Heart in a Box, which in this, McLaren's art was perfect, right? Because it was mostly focused on this one character. She was having this very realistic journey. So we only had to deal with 1 or 2 people per panel. And it really, really worked. I don't think her art works on an epic fantasy book where there's like a cast of 13 and then nobody gets to have faces. And then in the action, I spent like 20, 30 minutes trying to read some of these issues, staring at pages, trying to say, what happened? What moved? Who's getting shot or whatever? And I just couldn't figure it out. And unfortunately, Kelly Thompson's scripts are so dense with stuff that McLaren's just, I don't think she's the right artist. Now, Kelly Thompson thinks she's the right artist, so that's what matters, right? Because it's Kelly Thompson's book and she's funding it and it's her creator-owned book. I just am surprised that Kelly Thompson did a world that's this dense with characters and world building and in-jokes and cleverness for an artist that excels with much smaller cast of characters and much less dense settings. I think I said that as well as I could say it. Okay, now we're going to start the timer for Blood Squad. I have been on a roller coaster journey with this Blood Squad 7. This is issue number 6. Oh, by the way, that Black Cloak issue was the last issue of the second arc. So if you want to read all of Black Cloak, it's 2 whole arcs. I can't say that I recommend it, but it's there. Okay, Blood Squad 7. So this is by Joe Casey with art by Paul Fry, really good. Francesco Segala on colors and letters from Russ Wooten. The concept of this book is really interesting. Joe Casey basically said, look, Youngblood, because of all the legal challenges, may never be canon to the Image universe again. So what if I retroactively make up a team that holds the same place as Youngblood, had many of the same adventures of Youngblood, but have different characters, and now this is them in the present day, assuming that everything in the shared Image universe, which to Joe Casey is everything up to the Shattered Image event series, is in continuity. And so we're going to treat all that as if it's continuity, and now we're just in the modern day after that. Great idea. Love it. Great art, cool characters. Here's the thing. Every single issue is just them arguing about who should be in the team on the field. It's too slow a burn. We're in issue, what did I say this was now? Issue 6. Oh, and the other theme is old members of the team that went insane and tried to kill everybody. That's all we've done for 6 issues. You need more. Joe Casey's not the biggest name seller, so he's already got like a cult reading following this. He's not Hickman, right? He's not Geoff Johns. And also, this is playing with old, ancient Image continuity in a way that not everybody has affinity for. You can't spend 6 issues on the same plot beat. You just can't. I'll keep reading it because this is deeply my bullshit. But I am telling you, this series has already failed. He says, we're going to ride this as long as we're going to ride. I'm telling you, it's not going to make it to more than 14 because Local Man, which was one of the most acclaimed books in comics that had the exact same premise as this, but was by Tony Fleecs and Tim Seeley, and people were going crazy over, only made it to about 14 issues. And that was critically acclaimed best of year. This is not on that level. Unfortunately, I still like it. And if you like all those things I just said about it, you will probably like it too, but it's not long for this world. Oh, and so nice I put it twice. Or we're stuck in a time loop. Okay. There are bad comics that are fun to read because they're bad. And because they're camp, right? That notes on camp. Because they're campy. They make you laugh. This was so bad that it wasn't even campy. It was like, it almost felt like a ChatGPT comic, which is crazy because Adam Glass and Bernard Chang are creators I've really liked in the past, but the sequence of events and what happens in them is so absurd and not even funny absurd, just like what is happening. And it's just, the one thing I can say to characterize this to you is a group of friends. They're on like a train trip from Asia to Europe because they're bringing one of their friends to rehab, but they want to spend time with him. And then there's multiple pages about them talking about the last time they went to the bathroom and like how big their poops were. And then we immediately cut to a SWAT team bursting through the window of this train to try to kill one of them that happens to be infected with a vampire virus. And these regular kids just kill the SWAT team. Like, which if that sounds cool to you, I'm not doing my job. It was truly one of the worst comic books I've ever read. And not like Krisis doesn't like Tom King bad. I mean, truly bad. We're going to talk about 2 more comics in this stream that were like this on silliness level, but were actually campy, where they were like so bad that they went right back around to being incredibly great. This is not that. Do not read it. It was a single issue, one shot. I don't know why. I don't know why Bernard Chag would spend a whole month drawing these pages. It was offensively bad. Unfortunately, I did not catch up on the body trade because I don't like Zach Thompson's comic books. I just don't. A lot of people like him. I don't think he's a bad writer. Every time I went through a 4-year period where I got all of his number 1s and I read each number 1 and I was like, why would anybody read that? That made me hate life. But then people really like him. So congratulations, Zach Thompson. This is the Book of Cutter, which is a one-shot from James Tynion and Werther Dera and some other artists that basically it's a reward for sticking with Something is Killing the Children for 5 years. And it's an info dump of like all of the background of the world of Something is Killing the Children and how they establish these houses, like the House of Slaughter, the House of Cutter, that are their houses of like monster slayers. So what's really interesting about this is it did have a little bit of a narrative around this one black mask from that we've seen in the other books. But also about half of it is prose and it's lengthy. This took me, I mean, it's like a 90-page comic book and it took me well over half an hour to read it. And it's in the style of like a history book in the library of the House of Cutter, explaining how all of these houses were founded. It's like foundational documents. I actually found that part of it really, really cool. It even had stuff that was written in cursive, which I usually hate, that I actually sat and read because it was interesting. The actual comic book story in it barely makes any sense, even if you have been reading Something is Killing the Children, because it's so sparse and it never like tells you what the stakes really are. You have to be really up to date on Something is Killing the Children and House of Slaughter if you want to make sense of this main story. But in a way, I think you could still just pick this up and read it as like a sampler, because it kind of lays out what the whole monster killing world is. And I think it's fun to enter the idea of Something that is Killing the Children from that perspective, and then like come back, then go back and read actual Something is Killing the Children. So I'm going to take a sip of water and see what everybody has been saying. Oh, I needed that. Okay. Oh, we already talked about that. I didn't do my bookmarking thing. We talked about that. We talked about that. Richard Veering saying, hopefully they lift that restraining order. Well, you know, I think this is interesting. There's a line between actual creatives in any industry and then professionalized fans, which is what I'll call those of us who do a lot of fan stuff. I mean, transparency, I'm clearly making money off of Patreon and stuff. So like it is a semi-professional gig for me. And then fans, right? And I think it's a stratification. And I think it's in the business interest and the mental health interest of the actual professionals in any field, not just comics, to not really have that deep connections with the fans, and especially not the professional fans, because I think that we're doing different gigs from each other. And I think there's a really close crossover between people who are like collections editors and they freelancers that like map collections for them. That is a job that you can have. And I think actually it's so close, it's paper thin, like what they're doing and what Omar and I doing and what Tyler does is so similar that that there actually is overlap. And so I think it's weird for them to be in a public forum talking to us sometimes, because we would do it differently, and we would do it differently, and we've staked whole websites, videos, research projects, downloadable PDFs on that we would do it differently. And to a degree, when you're a professional in any kind of art or publishing field, you at a point you have to turn off the external feedback and just trust that you're doing it. So I joke about the restraining order. I don't know if they like me or not, or even I'm aware of me. It's just a running bit that I do. But I also don't think they actually want my opinion. And maybe one day they would, right? And I would work so hard to make sure that every book was so perfect. And even after I did that, you all would still complain about it. And then I would have moved up into the actual professionals and you would be the semi-professional, you know, so it's a constant spectrum. And I think people have to sometimes safeguard themselves by not moving up and down, or at least moving back down. A fifth of Jack Gaming says, should I keep the Phoenix Omnibus as Gotham did to Evergreen Street? Yes. Look, here's my position. And it's not a bit. I mean it. I think Chris Claremont Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 1 and 2 are not as rereadable as everybody says they are. And this is from somebody who's read all the material 5, 6, 7 times. But I don't, for reasons, like for shows, with my kid, for my guides. I just don't think that some of those comics, and especially in the teens, especially in the 140s, I don't think they're very good. I think the Dark Phoenix Saga is the best of the first 4 years of Claremont X-Men. And I think the second Phoenix Omnibus, if you want to keep reading Phoenix stuff, gathers a lot of that together. I don't think that has as much of a concise story in it. This third one is kind of a different beast, because it's really all about the death and return of Jean Grey. That's how you should think about it. If you want a book that's the death and return of Jean Grey, buy Phoenix Omnibus Volume 3. None of that material will ever be all together in one omnibus ever again. If you don't care, then don't buy it. J. McMillanbach got Gambit Complete Collection Volume 1. Jay was a big Gambit fan, trying to complete his Gambit shelf, so that is a big win. Some of these books, they seem new to some of us who've been around forever. They have not been in print for like a decade at this point. Smash that, hit like, subscribe, fun, love me. Is there a 8 is negative? Okay, so we did do some of this. Pity Moss says, sorry, Krisis, Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart popped in my head when I said turn around, focus. I was focused. Me too. That came on. If I hear that song come on, I just like wander away. Turn around. I just like wander somewhere in the depths. Oh, maybe it's not on this channel. It's on my band's channel. There is a video of me playing that with my band, but I want secret alternate reality game. Can you find that without me telling you the actual video name? Max Albman said, how about this fierce wintry weather we've been having? Oh, because I'm talking about how hot I am. Okay. Krisis is indeed in crisis mode. I read Astonishing Avengers, Astonishing X-Men. Tyler, sometimes the mouth moves faster than the brain, and you know that more than anyone. Brian 12ish says, didn't know Alligator Loki was a thing. If you have Marvel Unlimited, there's all these digital unlimited comics that come out every week, and you can just read them. You just read them. They're just there. You just read them. Looking forward to a complete mapping of My Boy Gambit. Well, I think Near Mint Condition is doing a vote on if the next map my X is going to be Emma Frost, Gambit, Mr. Sinister, or Magneto. And I have guides for 3 of those, but I don't have a guide for Gambit. So if it's Gambit, I will have to finish a Gambit guide. Beyond Corp owns the Spider-Man trademark, so Peter has no leverage. Great in-universe note, Georgie Chimchimov. I actually do like Preacher. That was my era of comic books. Garth Ennis is one of those comic authors that takes a very cynical view of the world that I just don't vibe with. And especially now when I start reading a series from Ennis, even when he's being funny, Ennis, because Ennis has a funny version of him that he does. It just doesn't, no wiring in my brain responds to that whatsoever. I wish Kelly Thompson would continue The Call. Yeah, well, I love The Call. I think The Call is a really strong story. I think Mattia Diallos is my favorite artist in comics, quite possibly. Yeah, I hope there's going to be more of The Call. But I hope he's also booked and blessed, and he has tons of gigs, and Kelly's got to like work to find time with him because he deserves that. I often found myself reading Black Cloak and thinking like, wow, like what would this have looked like with XYZ? But you can ask that question about any indie comic. Like those creators are together for a reason, and sometimes they go through a horrible breakup. We've seen that even on some Hickman indie comics. So, but I did find myself wondering like, what could have Black Cloak been if it was with, Diallos. Speaking of Youngblood, I'm looking forward to seeing either a companion or omnibus. I think Liefeld just got back some of the rights to Youngblood, but I don't know if that means he has the right to reprint Youngblood, but they are like reprinting like the #1 issue again. I don't know. Liefeld is a shark that just swims through money, and as long as there's money to swim through, he'll do it. I don't know if these other Image guys can convince him that a compendium is like the way to go, because to Liefeld, he's like, but a #1 will sell so many comics, and then I put out another #1, and then I can put a #1 with a new illustration. But like, yeah, those of us who read it back in the day, Youngblood was fun. Like there's a lot of good Extreme books that I've started doing in guides, and I own all of that early part of Extreme, and they're fun. They're great. Blood Train one-shot felt rushed, seemed like it watched the movie Bullet Train decide to turn it into a horror movie. Max Appelman, Blood Train, book of the year. No, don't lie. You didn't like it. I talked to you about this. Don't make me look bad. We agree that it was the most absurd comic ever. We'll get to our book of the year, and that's a little book. Well, I'm not going to spoil it, but Max and I both liked a ridiculous one later. Time loops on Groundhog's Day makes sense to me. Matt Hawk says, what do I think of Teen Titans, the Judas What do I think of Teen Titans, the Judas Contract? It's one of the most critical foundational Teen Titans stories of all time. That's why they picked it for the first DC Finest for Teen Titans. Lance McNair, Krisis, any negative enough experience with a fandom where it nearly put you off to the property itself? Yes, X-Men. For me, that's Star Wars. Yeah, it's late 2017. I don't think I need to elaborate. Yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Massive. I have been my whole life. There was a point that I truly did consume everything Star Wars. And I quickly discovered that I don't care about anybody else's opinion about anything Star Wars. I have no need to be part of a Star Wars community. I just want to be me, myself, and I, and maybe talking to just you, my close friends. And I've kind of reached that point in X-Men too. I went through such a negative experience with the X-Men fandom through no fault of theirs or mine. I think we just want different things from X-Men at points that's kind of why I stepped away from doing This Week in X and like branding myself as knowing all this stuff about X-Men. I stopped doing as many X-Men things on Omar's channel because it was making me not only not ever want to call myself a part of the fandom again, which I don't think I ever will do ever again, but it made me not want to make X-Men content because I didn't want the X-Men fandom to consume my content, which hurts because I want to talk to all of you about X-Men. I just don't want to talk to the amassed X-Men fandom. Keith loves the format of my streams. I don't give nearly enough stuff a chance. And Keith, that's exactly why I do this format, and find myself sticking to usual titles. I try to push myself out of my comfort zone every week, and I critically realize that I have the privilege of the time, the money, the technology that will allow me to do that. But I'm hoping that you come out of every one of these with like one title that you're like, oh, damn, that might be cool to me. And it might even be a title that I hated. Brain Tissue Paper says Omnis are more for completionists rather than story driven. I don't know if I agree with that. I think a lot of omnibuses are the best version of a certain story that have ever been collected because it's too big a story to be collected coherently in trade paperbacks or anything else. I completely disagree with that statement. I mean, I still love you, but I think omnis are actually more for story driven often than for completionists, because omnibuses very rarely are actually going to be a completionist game where they're going to collect every single thing. There's so few characters that that's true for. I mean, we have the X-Men, sort of Spider-Man. We're kind of sort of getting there, but there's huge gaps in Spider-Man. Moon Knight, Deadpool. There's not a lot of characters that we could name where every single thing is an omnibus. So no, I would not say that omnibuses are for completionists. What are my pronouns? Fairly starting to say you're non-binary in the first stream, and I want to be sure. Logan Wayne, I mentioned this in the last stream. I don't personally super care about pronouns. There's no pronoun you could use for me that's a normal English language pronoun that is going to upset me, except for it, because that's like a depersonalized pronoun. We don't use it to describe non-binary people. Even animals and things, often we will say they instead of saying it, because it has a depersonalization to it. But I truly don't really care. I think there's some people, and I said this almost verbatim last time, so I'm not going to cover it in every stream. I do think there's some people that when they're a certain gender identity and they hear another gendered pronoun, even a they, when they're really doing their best to present themselves as feminine, it can feel like a stab in the heart. And I have certain words and certain things that feel like that to me. Pronouns are just not one of them for me. So you can call me he, she, they. Doesn't really, as long as Krisis, doesn't really matter. Same perspective on fandom now, Krisis. I love the smaller comic book community on YouTube, but I still don't interact with the larger fandom. And you know what? The larger fandoms, it's kind of like one opinion takes hold, and then that kind of becomes the accepted opinion. And then it's really hard to have a conversation not about that opinion, whether it's a positive or negative. Like, The Last Jedi was bad. Hickman is great. Once one of those opinions really takes hold, there's very few opinions that stay on that controversy line, like Tom King. Tom King, Batman, I don't think the Bat fandom has really decided. And so you can argue either side of that, and it kind of remains fun, although people are quite vehement about it. But even in Spider-Man, like, people decided so early on that they hated Zeb Wells, and I thought Zeb Wells' run had positive qualities, right? Because I read every issue wishing for the best, and sometimes it's good. And the inability to enter a larger fandom and hold an opinion that's not the majority opinion, and to just have people say, well, you're just doing hot takes. I'm like, I'm just living my life, y'all. I'm not trying to make these takes be hot. All right. Tiger Eyes Red FML based on my recommendation. 1 was like waiting in line for the roller coaster. 2 is that clicking noise. 3 were off. I completely agree. 1, I was like, this might be cool. 2 was like, I'm getting the feeling this is really cool. And then 3 was like, cool down the roller coaster. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely agree. Just call me he's G, they, just don't call me late for dinner, Scott Green says. And that's where I'm going to hit pause on this and get back to talking about new comic books. Okay. We are up to, I wanted to read this so bad. Calavera PI, it's a skeleton as a detective. Plug it into the apertures of my body. I wanted to read it, and I just ran out of time because it was a number 3 issue, and I had to catch up, and I didn't have enough time to read this week. So I'm going to catch up on this. I'm going to read it for number 4, absolutely, because it just looks so fun, and I love stupid stuff like that. Same for this Corvus. So what I decided is, for these indie books that release on Global Comics, a lot of them release 1 or 2 weeks later the digital comic from when the paper comic came out. But because I work from paper comic release dates, that can be very confusing to me. So I'm just going to review up to whatever the most current digital issue is for those kinds of comics, because I think that's the only way to like not make this into a math problem. So I told you earlier this month I wanted to read this. I really wanted to read it, but I ran out of time this week. There's a lot, you're going to hear this for a few pulls from smaller comics, but that's because I did take the time to read some pulls from smaller people, like this one by this is a Mad Cave book. Mad Cave is like busting out all over. They had like 10 books this week. This is such an interesting book, Dark Empty Void, issue number 3. The art's really good by Chris Sheehan. I'm so into it. And Francesco Segala, who's everywhere doing colors, and flats from Agnes Posa and letters from Justin Birch. This is one of those indie series where I read the first issue and I was like, nailed it. There's this woman, she's a psychology professor. She's separated from her partner and he works for like NASA doing experimental things. And she's like lecturing on depression while she's at home being depressed. And he calls her and he's like, I don't know who else to call. I have a thing that is within your area of study and expertise, and I need you to come and do contractor work for NASA. I'm like, and the contractor work, the thing they're doing is they've made an artificial black hole. Oh, I guess I should have started the timer. We'll just like put it to 30 seconds. So they've started an artificial black hole. So she's like, well, okay. And so she's talking to this person and she thinks the person is just somebody shell-shocked from the experience of like going into the black hole. But no, it's something that came out. It's something that came out of the black hole. That said, I think the action in this is getting a little too back and forth. Everybody's in these spacesuits. You can't really tell what they are. One of them is flying in the air, but then the other one flies in the air to get the one that flew in the air. It's kind of just like a lot of... But if you like that premise and you have a little bit more patience for me because you read less than 60 comics a week, to like really stare at each panel and like follow the action and get invested in it, I think actually this is a pretty high quality indie comic. For me, it was just a little too like people floating back and forth through the air. I'm like, where's my plot? But I think it was actually great. Oh, Scott Green got tons of being on screen there with the Don't Call Me Late for Dinner. Okay, moving on. This is why I may need a producer down the line. There's only so many screens I can look at once. Okay, this is DC Power, Rise of the Power Company. This doubled as DC's Black History Month celebration comic book, as well as a one-shot reestablishing the Power Company. It actually had a number of different stories in it. So this first one is by Brandon Thomas, who I've learned to start being a little skeptical about his writing, and Charles Stewart III, and penciler Anthony Fowler, inker, and Ulysses Arreola, colorist, one of my favorite colors right now. It was fine. I like that it was the Power dude, I don't know, Josiah Power, working with Steel, and how they're both like kind of professional heroes, and that there's a difference between that and what they expect from each other and how they have responsibilities to their family. I just didn't think it was a great story. Then there was a Vixen and Bolt story that actually was, I thought it was really, really good. It was by Zipporah Smith, writer. Kelly Ramsey is on art. The art's like a little scratchy. Like you can even see it here. It almost looks like it's been like scratched over with pencils, but it was a really clever story. Cyborg and Green Lantern, really great looking art from Kanan White, of course, always looks great. And Adagon Ilhan with colors from Andrew Dalhouse, but they were written totally off voice. I think John Jennings just missed wide on the voices. So it was fun to look at, but it just didn't really make any sense to me. And then a Batman and the Signal story by Vita Ayala and Ray Anthony Height with Chris Sotomayor colors that was truly punishingly bad. So not a really big fan of that. Okay. Have you been waiting for one of those times that I scream? Is that real? Like, are you here to see me Hulk out? Because let me tell you, we're there. I get that on the 5th week of the month, DC puts out random one-shots because DC has a very strict 4 release weeks a month schedule, and they try to keep their big books off of the 5th week so they're predictable. I get it. Very professional. The problem is when they put out these $10 anthologies, are they in continuity? Are they out of continuity? Nobody knows. Who are the people that wrote these stories? Mostly you haven't heard of their names. Do they matter for these characters? No. Are they in character for these characters? No. Is the art good? Maybe. Is this ever going to come up again? No. Was there any good point being made in the story? No. Should anybody have accepted this pitch? No. Should anybody be spending $10 to read this stupid bullshit audition book with a bunch of nonsense in it that is not fit to hand even the comic reader that you hate the most? Pay $10? No. The answer is no. I get so... What? Why? Who is this for? Tell me if these stories needed to exist in the world. Tell me if we needed any of these stories to exist. Here's what they were. I'll go through all of them. There's a story about Lex Luthor by Sina Grace. It was horrible. There was a story with Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. Not only was horrible, but the art was horrible. There was a story about Mr. Freeze. This was actually really good. Credit where it's due. I guess after all of my screaming. This was called Beautiful Lies. It was by Jonathan Rivera, art by Michael Avon Oeming, and it was a truly touching Batman animated style story of Mr. Freeze. Then we go to the next story, which was Robin's and Titan story. It was okay. Then we go to Damian. This was written so out of character. It's like this person was purposely trying to write a story that didn't sound anything like Damian and Tim Drake to see how far they could mess it up and then get into this book. It made me want to punch something. Then this Riddler story just existed. I really like that one face Joker makes right there. Then there was a Beast Boy and Raven story that was truly unreadable. And then there was actually a truly amazing Hawkman story. So out of 8 stories, only 2 were good. 2/8, 1/4. So I would have given this a score of 1.25 out of 5, and it was $10. Okay. This was another one that was on my pull list that I just didn't get to. Dead Samurai. This is a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, so they've at least got money. Story inside might be bad, but they got enough money for a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. Then we come to the first physical Marvel book in this week's poll. It's Deadpool by Cody Ziegler, with art from Roge Antonio, colors by Guri Effects, and VC's Joe Sabino lettering. I love this book. This is a reason why I stick with things. If I had not stuck with this book, I hated the first 2 issues of this so much. This book is so charming. Deadpool's back. This is the most fun I've had in a Deadpool book for years. I like the Scotty Young run. That was what, 2018? So we're talking about 7 years where I haven't loved a Deadpool comic. And I like Deadpool. I don't like stupid Deadpool, and I don't just mean the stories are stupid, when he's just played for dumb. I like it when there's a little bit of heart. He's got to have something to lose. I loved this. The art was great. It was kind of an in-between issue, but that makes a great issue to pick up. This was a 0 issue or a number 1 issue. You don't have to read anything that came before this. You learn everything you need to know. He's got a mercenary agency. His daughter is there, which sounds weird. You're like Deadpool's daughter, but the story really makes it work. I was skeptical. Taskmaster is there as kind of their CFO / trainer, and he's hilarious. I always love Taskmaster. And Deadpool's if we want to make money, we got to take some bad jobs because people don't trust me right now, which is also great plot development. I love that we have fun Deadpool back. Keep it up, Cody Ziegler. You're crushing it right now, and we are so happy to see it. Dick Tracy. So you have to know about me at this point. If there's one thing that I'm a bigger fan of than comic books or X-Men or any of the nonsense we talk in this stream, it is Madonna. And Madonna did the soundtrack to the original Dick Tracy movie. The soundtrack said, it was called I'm Breathless because one of the characters in Dick Tracy is Breathless Mahoney. So I didn't know Breathless Mahoney was going to turn up in this until she did. But there's this song on it where Madonna takes all these clips from the movie of her saying things. And one time she's like, Dick Tracy, but it just takes the word Dick and then it remixes her. And this is in the 90s. This is not a modern thing. So it's just her going, Dick, 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 Dick. It's a song called Now I'm Following You, part 2. So you have to understand that the entire time I'm reading this comic, I'm just singing the word Dick in my head over and over again. That said, it's bad. Dick Tracy has such a rich history of comic strips, such a cool, cast of characters with these exaggerated features, which they're all named for. And Alex Segura seems to just want to speed run killing them all. It makes me think that this comic isn't meant to last. How are you writing a comic book that's not as interesting as comic strips? Also, it kind of feels like this arc right now is literally redoing the Dick Tracy movie. I get it. That's 35 years old right now. So go on with your bad self and redo the Dick Tracy movie. But I have so much existing affection for this character without expectations. I don't really need it to be a certain things. I haven't read a lot of Dick Tracy comics, but to read it and to see somebody do such a bad job with it was so depressing. The only thing this comic is about is people getting gunned down, which I get is a lot of what Dick Tracy is, but it doesn't feel like there's any intrigue level. This issue kind of sort of got there, and I like Breathless Mahoney, but I cannot recommend this comic book, unfortunately. Alex Sakura, I do like your question comic book for DC, but I'm finding that I'm not vibing with you. You might soon go on my don't fly list in terms of indie books, but y'all, this book, I'm going to go over a minute. It's fine, but let's at least see how far over I go. This is why I pick up new comic books that I had no intention of reading, because this book is a modern masterpiece. It's called Dust to Dust. It's from the Giant Generator imprinted image. It's by G.A.G. Jones, who does the art and co-writes, and Phil Bram with letters from Jackie Marzan. This comic, much like Days of Sand, focuses on Great Depression era America, and it focuses, right when I took that book off the shelf, this crazy noise started happening outside. Hopefully you have to tell me if it bothers you, but it made me very nervous. It follows a WPA photographer through America, just like this book does, as she goes to document life in the Dust Bowl, just like this book does. But this book is much more about the photographer's life and how he sees it. It's probably somebody mowing the lawn. I'll close the window. But this book focuses more on the town, on the setting. It's all in this beautiful, like sepia toned art. The likenesses are amazing. The characters are so distinct. Everything feels like a real photograph, which works because it's a book about photography, but it's also about how hard life was here. They're literally dust farmers. They're like drilling for any semblance of oil or water or anything because the farming is just out the window. And it's about this town. I have to close this. Oh, it's gonna be so hot now. So it's about this town and the sheriff in this town, and kind of you get the sense that things in this town are not all that's cracked up to be, not in a sinister way, but there's people of hatred in this town. There's people who are poor in this town. There are people who are moving west to California because otherwise their family is going to starve in this town. There's so many stories embedded in it, and sometimes you only get a panel or two, but we are experiencing that through this woman coming to town to take pictures of it, and the sheriff just kind of going around and trying to keep the town in order. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what the big story is. I don't care. I feel like I'm reading a historical document. It's based on real life. It's not a true life story, but it's stunning. The artwork is every page. You could spend an hour looking at every page. J.G. Jones's artwork is like nothing you've recently seen in an interior. I could not recommend this book more highly if you do have an appetite for historical fiction. If you don't, then you're probably not gonna like this, and you don't have to like all the same things I like. But this, the only reason this is not number one of the year for me is because I get such an electric thrill from Kelly Sue DeConnick's FML. But it is, if they both stay at this quality, it is going to be a battle of the Titans for 1 and 2, because this is unlike anything I've ever read. Even though it's very much like Days of Sand, the art is so different that to me they don't overlap. They could really exist in the same universe as each other. This to me looked so my thing. It's called Eule's Vision. Like, who calls a comic that? What is going on? Look at his little tiny feet on his big chubby legs. Don't you just love that? So I was like, I'm going to read this comic book. And then I couldn't find it digital. I think it's going to be on Global Comics, but maybe it hasn't caught up because this is issue number 3. So I do want to read it because it looks, I mean, it's like a deer with such cute little feet. I think I'm really going to like it. Okay. Exciting comics. Antarctic Press has this whole line of superhero books. And I read a couple of these like back in 2019, still going. Who's buying these? Like, who's the audience? And I don't mean that in a like nobody should buy it way. I truly want to know. Like, okay, so there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of people watching the stream right now. Have any of you ever read any of these Antarctic Press hero books? I'm just curious to know. Okay. Exit City. Oh, this was really cool. Okay, here's an indie book I can actually like turn you onto because I took the time to catch up on it earlier in the alphabet. I was more, I had more faith. I was going to have more time to read, and so I read more books. This is by Mark London, who writes a lot of the Mad Cave books. It's with Carl Mostert art. Mostert's art, if you don't know him, looks a lot like Frank Quietly's art. Colors by Dave Barron, letters by Dave Sharp. This concept is so cool. It's an alternate version of the 80s and 90s where California tries to secede from the United States with a Cal exit. It doesn't. So they start building an offshore city outside of California. The United States still claims sovereignty over it, but they make it a special economic zone. So it's kind of like off on its own to a degree, even though it's kind of, so it has its own government. It has its own police force. So there's this guy on the police force there, and he's like their best detective. And there's this really alarming, brutal murder that looks like a government hit of some kind. And he's trying to investigate it. And he's also got this agent that he's met that is kind of like everybody there's on the take. So she's like kind of on the take, but he's like on the up and up, and he's like, I don't want to be your partner. And she's like, well, I don't want to be your partner. And so they realize that they both have parts of the information to solve this. And it gets into, oh God, I don't want to spoil it, but he talks to, I guess I can spoil the first issue a little bit. He talks to these primary colored little bottles in his jacket because he says that they are the implant chips from his squadron from when he was in the army. And even though the people guy died, they encoded their personalities into the chips, and he can talk to them. Do we believe him? Is he a reliable narrator in this way? Maybe not. I think it's so clever. I think the art is amazing. It's very Phil Quietly-esque, but or Quietly-esque, but not maybe as like wrinkly as quite. I think it's so cool. It's like not like a 5 out of 5 comic book, but this is the thing you're going to hear me talk about a lot as I encode my opinions. I think good indie comics are all about good high concept, good characters. If you have boring characters and a high concept, what am I sticking around for? I can just write that fanfic in my head. If you have great characters but no high concept, it's like, well, is this just a soap opera? Are they ever going to do anything? This hits on both the top and the bottom of that spectrum for me. So I will read that comic book forever. That's all you need to do to get me hooked, is have cool characters and a cool concept. There's some room for you to fuck up a little bit in the middle. I will keep reading. Okay. Speaking of things that didn't make me keep reading, but you might like this. So this is being published by Antarctic Press. It's called Freakier Than Normal, and this is issue number 5, but it was originally a Kickstarter comic, and it is on Global Comics. So if you have a subscription to Global Comics, you can read it right now. I only read the first issue. It's not for me. It's this manga influenced, it's not manga, but it's influenced, about these girls that are roommates, and one of them plays a computer tournament or like a video game fighting tournament, and they're coming over a fighting tournament, and she gets hit by a meteor and turns into a superhero. So it's kind of like it's funny, it's cute. But it had this one panel, and this is an issue 1, but this is just not a me thing, where this woman runs and she trips and she falls in the ground, and she falls in such a way that her face should hit the ground, but her breasts like go up in front of her, and like her face falls on her breasts. And I know that that's just like a cartoony trope that one does in like titty books. Even though I am known for liking my Cheesecake 90 books, I don't like them because I want to see people's heads bouncing off of their breasts. I like them because they tend to have cool female characters, and to get a cool female character in the 90s, you probably had to read a Cheesecakey book because there weren't many others. But that to me just turns me off. It's not like I'm like opposed to that, but that's not why I'm reading a comic book when we're going to do like female body humor about boobs. I don't know if I'm expressing myself in a way that makes sense, but that's why I didn't keep reading it. Green Lantern. Here's shocker of shockers, because I'm on the record that Hal Jordan is by far my least favorite comic book character. I kind of low-key am obsessed with this comic book right now. Jeremy Adams, I didn't really like the run at the beginning. He was so focused on Hal and Hal just being terrible. And I was like, I can't believe we have to read a whole comic with this, but sometimes you got to trust the process. Jeremy Adams wrote this 18-issue and 2 one-shot story of Hal refining his groove, him refining Carol Ferris, the Green Lantern Corps coming back together. That was really cool and had great art the whole time, and really, really good colors, all by Romulo Fajardo Jr. I've discovered that if you have a book with interior art from Fernando Pescerin, who did this issue, I'm going to love your comic book. Like I think drew the first issue of Green Lantern Corps in New 52. When I see a page of his art, I'm like, this is the most amazing thing I've seen. I don't need to know anything else. There's actually another artist on this issue, Claire Albert. So I don't know which one of them is this page. I don't care. So much fun with this rain coming down. Connor Kent Superman is like, why are you here? Kyle Rayner puts up a Green Arrow umbrella. They instantly have a crush on each other, and Kyle's like, what is going on here? Really, really fun, because this book has so much going on up here. See, true for Big 2 too, that you can get away with these little silly personal moments because I trust that you have a big plot and it's interesting. So this is kind of a kickoff issue, just like the Fractured Spectrum one-shot a couple weeks ago was a kickoff issue. I think this is a better kickoff than that. That to me was kind of boring, and I was like, okay, fine. This made me really interested to keep reading the book. I think this almost made it to my top 10. If it wasn't, because when there's one-shots that are clearly part of a series, I, in my average, include them as part of the series. So I didn't love that one shot, but just in terms of the actual issues of Green Lantern, this book is great. But I'm not a Jeff Johns Green Lantern fan, so I have Green Lantern to me, I want Jedis in space. That's what I'm looking for. I want some core doing some stuff in space. So if you want something different from Green Lantern, maybe this is not going to give it to you. But for me, I absolutely love it. See, isn't it nice when I have positive things to say about multiple comments in a row? I didn't read this, The Gun Hand. It looked like a zombie, Wild Westy, scarecrow haunted, just not my thing. But you know what? Might be your thing. Maybe you haven't heard about it. Maybe it's something you go and check out, right? Hellhunters, definitely not my thing, but I read it because it's Marvel. So this is taking in perspective that there's a Ghost Rider in World War II France just ahead of D-Day, which I think is a great concept. And it takes the perspective that he specifically was murdered by some occult Nazis. And that's why he gets a Ghost Rider, which is vengeance, which is one of the spirits that we do know, one of the Ghost Rider spirits we know. And that's why. And I think that's a good concept. But then we're trying to make it that he like meets up with Nick Fury and Peggy Carter, and then he meets up with Logan, which means this is a canonical Logan and Nick Fury. It's just a lot of load-bearing structure. I love Adam Gorham's art. I always have loved it ever since he was on New Mutants Dead Souls back in 2018. I think Frank Martin colored it a little too shiny in the first issue, and I think for a World War II series, I don't want that typical shiny Marvel color. I want it to be like not knocked back. I want it to be saturated, but I don't want it to like glow the same way that we would in the modern day. I think Martin actually figured it out on this issue. People can grow and change. However, this really is just like Ghost Rider action in World War II. there's not a lot of deeper meaning to it right now. So if you want to read World War II, Nick Fury type stuff, but with a Ghost Rider and occult Nazis who are going to get murdered horribly by the end, I am sure, then you would like this. Is it essential in any way for a Nick Fury fan or a Carter fan or a Wolverine fan? Absolutely not. This is another book by Garth Ennis, isn't it? I don't know. Oh no, it's by Maria Lovett. I don't know why I don't read this. I don't know what it is. I was like, hello, darkness, my old friend. I had no idea. So you can tell me if you've read it. In fact, before we go on to Hornsby and Halo, because this is going to involve some screaming, spoilers, let's see how we're doing. Oh, look, my bookmarking made sense. Logan, that's fine. No, I have no expectation that everybody watches every stream. I just don't want to repeat myself. I definitely think a lot about the Krisis lore and that I don't want to tell the same stories all the time because I have so many stories that I do tend to retell on near mint condition. So I'm trying to just make sure that I tell some original stories here. Looking forward to mapping my gambit if people vote for it. Oh, it stopped scrolling sometimes. Okay. What are my thoughts on X-Men by McKay? We'll get to that, Victor. Oh, Vitor, right? If I'm saying it right. Vitor's one of my rare few where we love X-Men comics and we love Drag Race. So I love when I get to talk to Vitor. And X-Men's the last book on my poll. So unfortunately, you will have to watch the whole stream to hear me talk about it. And I'm not talking about it just because I like you. Okay. Lance says, about to drive for a bit, won't be commenting, but we'll be listening in case I don't comment again. Love the stream once again. Krisis Lance. You have to understand that you are my comic community. I don't have a local comic book store. I don't have people. I have Omar and Lars and Omnidog. And then I have y'all to talk to comics about. So to see you here and to have this conversation with you, to me, is the equivalent of going to a local comic book store. And it makes me so happy. Talking about this, you have to get in the chat if you want to see some of these secret conversations. I'm not going to highlight everything, but I did have great hair in that video. Okay, need a producer. Where is Spiral? Yeah, I could use somebody with 6 arms and a total of 30 fingers because there's a lot of moving parts and then there's a window I have to close. I could use somebody fanning me from on screen. Maybe I need like a big fan on the floor like Beyonce, and then my hair would just be doing this the entire time. That would be great. Scott Green being very nice and saying kind things about the show. James Abel read DC Lex in the City, hit and miss. I really enjoyed Harley. I hated the Harley story, but to each his own. Mr. Freeze and Beast Boy stories. You didn't like the Hawkman story? Is the best story in the whole book, James. To each his own. Somebody saying damn about something or possibly talking about Kendrick Lamar. Who knows? Max Appleman, gosh, I'm trying to wind down before bed and now the adrenaline is surging through my system after this review of Flex in the City. Adam S. Messenger, hey, Adam, the people who did Mr. Freeze did Kate Carson as a cybernetic eye, which was a really cool young animal series. Okay, so sometimes you realize that certain creators are going to just hit your buttons every time, right? They're just every time they're going to push your buttons, even if not everybody loves them, which is a great thing to know. Max Appleman loves Dead Papa and Friends along with me. I think Deadpool, jump on with number 10. Don't read number 1. It's actually not that good. Just jump on with 10. Then, once you have affection, this is why sometimes I talk about how you have to jump into comic books in the middle of the book. Sometimes you got to start from the most thrilling, fun issue and then go back and have affection for the series and the creators that let you stick with it when it's a little up and down and finding its footing. To me, I'm like, read Deadpool 10, then go back and read number 1 and be like, how are they going to get to number 10 from here? Because then you'll be curious and want to know, because I would have just dropped it if I had just read number 1. Cody Ziegler, Ryan Jackson, I think Cody Ziegler is not, I don't want to say this in like a patronizing way, like, oh, he's coming into his own. He's a comic book professional, and I'm in my spare bedroom broadcasting on YouTube to, low hundreds of people. So who's the winner here? Cody Ziegler. But in so much as I am proud of people when they do work that puts a smile on my face and seems to really click, I'm proud that Cody Ziegler has really like found a voice, and he went from just writing a couple of comic books for Marvel 2 or 3 years ago to writing 2 of their biggest titles right now. That's cool. I like that. I'm happy for him. Deadpool and Daughter, 10 for 10 from Scott Green. Yes, sir. James Abel says, Dick Tracy number 7. The series is great. It's giving me Untouchables vibe. Police versus gangsters. All the way they did the cliffhanger at the end was very good. I will say the art is good. I think the thing for me is it just feels... I get that in the comic strip of Dick Tracy, a lot of people get gunned down. So that's like the punctuation point in a lot of the comic book strips, but that's in 3 and 4 panel comic book strips. In a book, I'm just looking for more nuance. We got so much interesting commentary about him in the first 2 issues that I really loved, that he's one of the youngest people to make detective, that he has a history in World War II. Like, it just really made me care about the character a lot. And then now that we're going on, it seems like all that's happening is people are dying. And he's like, shucks. Also, like at the end of issue 6, that there was a cliffhanger about that person who got stabbed, and it was clearly really sad and scary for them. And then they're in the whole issue 7 having clearly been stabbed, and there's like no commentary on that whatsoever. It felt very clumsy to me. Me and Peter are going to have marriage counseling again every week. James, this is couples counseling for me and James Abel. Adam Messenger says, liked Mike Omni's Dick Tracy. I've never actually read that. I have to read, like, what is, like, the accepted best Dick Tracy? I don't know. Other than Madonna saying dick, 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 dick. James Abel, it's a great idea for a show. Abel and Krisis go to comics counseling. Yeah, well, we are talking about it. Nobody heard the weird sounds. Maybe I don't have to have the window closed and sweat to death. Somebody said some book was, hopefully Dust to Dust was what you were saying was amazing, David C. Chris Brogan said, I definitely need to check out Dust to Dust. If you love Days of Sand, you must run to Amazon right now and get digital copies of Dust to Dust. It will 100% hit for you if you love Days of Sand. Order of the Parliament of Rooks based on beer. Well, it was free on Comixology, but to each their own. No, but I'm glad you did. Like, I want to, and you know what? Even if you just think that book is like mildly okay, that's a book that you would have never read if we had not talked about it on here. So totally a fun. Zermonico got you to check out Green Lantern. Zermonico, Adam Messenger, I think I first encountered him on Wonder Woman, maybe Steve Orlando's first very brief run on Wonder Woman. And I was like, what the fuck? This guy's amazing. So yeah, even on a comic that I don't super love, and some of those early issues of Green Lantern were like 1 star for me because I just don't love Hal Jordan. I was like, but Zermonico. So I think one of DC's best artists, Secret Weapon. Barely read any Marvel. I can't blame you because Marvel sucks. We're gonna, one of these moments of crisis coming up is gonna be like, why does Marvel suck so much? Because their poll list just makes me dread it every week right now. But I have the most of my guides are Marvel guides, so it like helps me to keep up with Marvel, but I can't say that it excites me. And I actually had a different topic for Moment of Krisis today, but then the Krakoa Omnibus dropped. I'm like, well, we should be talking about that. It's an anthology with an ongoing Ennis story. So that's why I didn't read Hello Darkness, because I saw that it was Ennis. Map my Gandas and Sinister Before Storm. Here's the thing, Tiger Eyes. If we mapped Storm, what would that map be? Like, how do you pick the best Storm stories? Is Storm having dinner every time she has dinner with Doom a good Storm story just because she's having dinner with Doom? Is Storm in the Brood Saga good because she has to decide if she's going to kill End of Life? Like, there's so many Storm amazing moments seeded through so many comics, and that's just, we're talking about 20 issue range of Uncanny X-Men. Then we get like, is Storm, every time Storm does something cool without powers, is that cool? Is Storm being a little kid in Cairo, Illinois with Gambit good? Like, Storm is so often the driver of the main plot of X-Men. How do you decide what would go into a Storm omnibus? Because any good X-Men issue while Storm is on the team tends to be a good Storm issue. Hello Darkness is pretty solid anthology, also some great for Zonka. Maybe since it's anthology, I could just pick up the next issue, right? So I could just do that. Jacob Millen back, looking forward to my complete mapping of Gambit. Me too. It's actually, some guides, I want it so bad that I'll start it, and like in my off hours, if I like wake up too early or if I'm awake at night and I have nothing to do, I'll like just chip away and do like 20 minutes of that guide. And I've been doing that for Gambit for years. So actually it won't be hard when I finish it because I've chipped away at it for so long that Logan Wayne Kendrick has won 3 Grammys for not like us. No, it's the Grammys. I can't believe you're watching me instead of the Grammys. You could be seeing Shabelle Roan. I can't wait to see what she does. She better win some Grammys. And I love award speeches. So as soon as this is over, I'll be watching plenty of Grammys. Okay, Hank makes children's books for a living, and what comic stories would I recommend to younger readers as a gateway into comics? Starting to get my kid into comics by giving them the world to see. Well, I'm unusual in that I just started reading X-Men with my kid out loud. I think reading comics out loud is huge for kids because kids can learn so much about a comic that's drawn well and intuit things from the movement. And like a storybook, then they only have to read the words, but the words are associated to specific characters, which makes it even easier for them to read. So I think that's why comics work so great for early readers. We read Lumberjanes together. I think those first like 4 or 5 Lumberjane trades, the quality declines, but the first 5 Lumberjane trades are pure magic. I think Kelly Thompson's Mega Princess is a super adorable indie comic. I'd have to go into the next room over and look at the kids shelf because Kid has everything. But I think the key though is like reading comics with kids. I think you could give a kid a stack of comics and they might like it or not. But whether that kid is 2, which is when we really started her second day of being alive, but 2 is when we really tucked into it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, we still will sit next to each other and I'll read the comics out loud, but now she'll do some of the voices too. I think it's a way to get a kid to love reading before they can deal with not only the depth of the reading that you have to do for a whole prose novel, but also the reading words and then creating a mental picture for those words. I think you need training to do that. And that's why storybooks work. And it's the same reason comic books work. So I'll try to start remembering to grab a couple of things off of her shelf in the room next door before I come in and do the stream so we can talk about some kid comics sometimes. But I'm sweating to death and I'm not going to run back and forth to get it right now. We're just going to stay at this spot. Okay, we got to get back. That's why Storm deserves 2 omnibuses. Okay, so we're almost up to present there. All right, let me put a little star on that and stop showing it and then share my screen because you were warned there's going to be some screaming. This is Hornsby and Halo. It is by Peter J. Tomasi, who I love, and Peter Snydberg, whose art is awesome and really great colors by John Callis and letters by Rob Lee. I love heaven and hell bullshit. And so if you have a kid who's an angel being raised by mean people and a kid who's a devil being raised by nice people, I'm there. I'm there. I'm if there's 100 fans, I'm one of them. If there's 1 fan, I am one of those fans. I have the first ticket you sold to your show. But if you're going to write this, like what you need to actually have a point. So great illustration of the thing that I keep talking about. This has a great high concept, right? That whole thing I just described. The low, who the characters are isn't there. We've been told that one of them's good and one of them's bad, but there's no reason to like them or be on their side or care about them. And every issue just is like, oops, we bumped into something happening that's good or bad. And we're going to turn into an angel and a devil briefly while we conveniently fall unconscious and have a fight over it. And it's like, you have this amazing concept. You have this beautiful illustrator. You're on GF John's Ghost Machine with all eyes on you. People love you from doing Super Sun. So we know, Peter J. Tomasi, that you can accomplish this. Why is this book so boring? Why can't you figure out how to do something worthwhile with these kids? Why don't they have any characters? Why don't I understand why I'm reading the book? Why can't I tell where it's going? How many issues in a row do you think you can get away with just having these 2 kids like steal $5 out of a junk drawer and like make that a morality play that I'm going to care about before I drop the book? Because let me tell you, I know how many more issues it is. It's 1 more issue. And that's only because I hold your writing in such high regard and because Peter Snydberg's killing it on the illustrations here, but this could not be more boring. And I say that as somebody who will always show up with the #1 ticket for heaven and hell stuff. So I didn't scream as much as I thought I was going to. I don't like Ice Cream Man. It's a horror anthology. I read like the first 12 or 13 issues. I did not like a single one. I found some of them sort of insulting. I get that I'm a weirdo and most people don't feel that way, but I've learned that it's not for me, and knowing that they're not for you is important. Jim Henson's Labyrinth. Obviously one of my favorite movies. I love David Bowie. I mean, I saw my baby crying hard as babe could cry. What would I do? Right? Yeah. What kind of magic spell to use? I love Dance Magic Dance. So Boom did this Kickstarter where they were going to do deluxe library editions of all of their existing Labyrinth comic books, some of which are really good. I love Labyrinth Coronation by Cy Spurrier, but they kept saying that they were also going to add an adaptation of the original Labyrinth as the final book. And all throughout the Kickstarter, people kept asking them, well, who's the creative team going to be? That's the kind of thing someone might care about if you're saying you're going to put out a new comic. And they didn't announce the creative team until the last 12 hours of the Kickstarter. So this is that comic book, which we already know will be collected in oversized format. And I have not read it yet because I ran out of time this week. And it's adapting the original movie of Labyrinth, which is one of my foundational holy texts. So maybe I'll get to catch up to it for next time, but I don't recognize either of these people's names. Doesn't mean they're not famous. They might be famous to somebody other than me, but maybe that's why they didn't want to announce names. But I still think they could have like given those creators the respect of like putting their names on the Kickstarter and say, hey, and the new adaptation of Labyrinth will be by Vander Cluckton Spalletta. It just struck me as really rude. Okay, so this is one of those ones that I have a new rule that even if the newest issue isn't out, I'm gonna talk about the previous issue in digital comics. It's called Katabasis. It's by Black Box Comics. It's really fun. Again, angel and devil stuff, I'm always there for. If it doesn't ring your bell, then all this is going to be lost on you. First of all, the interior art looks just like this. The colors are really, really good. And these are not people you've heard of elsewhere. They are like putting their heart and soul into this cool indie comic book. Issue 1, there's this woman who's like kind of an assassin. Maybe she's already kind of contracted by heaven and hell. We don't quite know. And she gets in over her head and she dies. But they hold her over in limbo. And they're like, if you keep working for us, and kind of ferrying angels that are being sought by devils outside of the devil's notice to us, we will keep you alive and you'll have all these cool powers. And so now she's like this cool undead assassin and she's got to do the stuff. Look, I only read the #1 issue, so maybe it's going to fall on its face when this one hits digital. But again, cool concept, right? Like reason to read. And they develop her well as a character, which a lot of these comics this week, I think really, really struggled with, or at least I struggled with how they do it. I understood her voice. I understood like why she was cynical about it. I found her a little bit funny and charming. Go if you like that Heaven's Assassin kind of comic book. This is one of the books that actually did it really well last month, and I'm really excited to keep reading it. Kill Train. Okay, so in the same way that Blood Train was totally horrible, this was the campy, silly version of that. It's by Olivia Quintero Briggs, art from Martina Niosi. So it's an all lady creative team. Very cool. Colors Simone D'Angelo and letters from Becca Carey, who I love. This was you had to love this for the camp factor because it was actually kind of like hard to really. It was campy. It was B-movie. This woman has a daughter. She got a divorce, so she got remarried. The guy she remarried is terrible, but she's like there just for the money, and he like kind of dangles the money in front of her like a carrot. So it's like clearly not a marriage for love. But also they live in New York, and New York has decided because they are so overpopulated that every unknown amount of intervals, one of the subway trains will be the kill train, and everybody on it will die. That's the concept. And why would people keep taking the subway? Well, there's this whole culture that builds up around it. Like, well, they just did it yesterday, so they're probably not going to kill anybody today. And so people just keep taking the subway, and then subway cars keep getting killed, and it's like just accepted. And there's no reason other than it's for overpopulation. Like, there's so many questions you will ask while you are reading it where you're like, why? And the comic's like, don't worry, don't worry your pretty little head about that. And that's what this comic is. So in the same way that Blood Train made no sense and it wasn't even like funny, this made no sense, but it had that campy, like this is absurd quality to it. I'm not saying I recommend it. I thought it was pretty bad. I'll maybe read one more issue, but if you like that B-movie quality of horror, gory comic book. So spoilers, at the end of the issue, she's like, well, the kill train was just yesterday. All kill trains are blood trains, but are all blood trains kill trains? The kill train was yesterday. But so I probably could take the train today because I dropped my wallet and I have to get back home and I only have enough change for the train. And then it turns out to be the kill train. So if that sounds fun to you, you'll have fun. I don't read Knights vs. Samurai. I love that that show, Shogun, has made it so that you can sell a bunch of samurai stuff right now, more so than usual. Samurais are cool. I read the first couple of issues. That's fine. I think I will actually like this when I go back and read it in collection. It's by David Dalmatian, who's an actor and also a director and a writer. It just was a little slow for me, but it's very historical fiction samurai, but with dragons and other fantastical things. I didn't read Kosher Mafia. I think does that mean it's going to be an all Jewish mafia? I don't know. This is also from Mad Cave. They put out so many comic books this week. I am a Lady Death person from way back. I love 90s Lady Death because again, heaven and hell, I'm always there effing with that. And I, for at least the first 12 Kickstarters they have done, I backed every single one. And they're like $7 to $10 per digital comic book. I'm like, I'm going to support indie comics. I'm going to buy these Lady Death. Babes, fam, friends, they're just titty comics. They're just titties. That's all it is, titties. There's no story. Sometimes it looks cool. And there's a little bit, like she is a Lord of Hell, and like there's a little bit of little tiny, vague story wrapper around it. But it's about TNA at this point. And at a point, if my cheesecake is not delivering strong female protagonists, I will dismount if we've got a blood train and a kill train, what's that, the tit train? I don't know. But I will eventually leave the tit train at the station. So I'm no longer buying every Lady Death comic, but I've dropped well over $100 supporting all of the Kickstarters and finally read enough of them that I discovered that they are no longer for me. I really wanted to read this. It looks really cool. I'm sorry, I just didn't have enough time this week. So I don't know anything about it. I just thought that cover looked cool. And it's another Mad Cave book, The Last Wardens. Sorry. This week I've been so stressed. I was nearing stress vomit. Not to give you TMI. So some stuff just didn't get read. This just looked cute. Apparently Lenore is like a thing. It's like an existing property that everybody knows. I don't know it, but I was like, oh, that looks fun. Okay, I want to just talk about this for a minute. I'll give myself a minute. I did not read this. In the year of our Lord, 2025, who is running to the comic book store to buy 3 Stooges comics? And then on top of that, Who's running to the comic store to buy little Stooges? I'm not mocking you if that's you. This is a demographic survey. Hello. Would you like to take a brief survey? Do you know who the Three Stooges are? Are you motivated to consume Three Stooges media? And if you are, would you pay $4.99 for a comic book about the little Stooges? Please leave your comments below. I am so curious to know your answers, because how does one even find out about who the Three Stooges are? Like in my day, back in my day, you could watch some reruns on during the day and they'd slip in some Three Stooges every once in a while back in my day. But now, how would Kid Crisis find out about Little Stooges? Probably from the internet. Are they big on TikTok? Are the Three Stooges big on TikTok? I don't know. Okay. Moving on. Long Cold Winter. Do you know why I hope you watch the show? Not for the screaming, but for when I occasionally find a weird book that makes me so excited, even though I know it's not the best book ever. That is Long Cold Winter. It's by Francesco Perillo and Stefano Cartacelli, with colors from Lorenzo Scaramella and letters from Buddy Badwan. For this, I looked at this cover and I was like, what is this going to be about? And the thing is, it's named the wrong thing. It should be named Peace Dog, because this weird character that looks like an artichoke or something is named Peace Dog. And it's like very TMNT Last Ronin. And it's one of these books that just gives you so many layers of things that it's almost like a fever dream, because the thing just keeps happening as it shows up and you have to kind of just take it like, okay, we're into a world where there's not enough fresh air, so you have to have a subscription for air. Okay, got it. And this guy is like a former veteran, but everybody knows him, but then some people haven't seen him for 10 years. Okay, got it. And a robot kid comes to him to take him to safety in the middle of the no air desert. Okay, got it. Like, you just keep yes and like you just keep yes anding. I love indie comics like this. I like bright, messy, sketchy, like just weird. They remind me of 90s indie. They remind me of Tank Girl. It's in that kind of post-apocalyptic setting like Tank Girl. It's so weird and bright and messy and yes, Andy, and I love that in an indie comic. So again, great concept up here, cool character down here, and a cool middle of like lots of weird details that, even though they're introducing them and that you're supposed to just take them at face value, just like on the Kill Train, here they kind of like aid the ridiculousness of the story rather than just being like, okay, that's kind of absurd, but I guess we're going to keep reading. I just kept taking more and more pictures out of it because I just am so obsessed. This particular kind of art style, this like kind of really sketchy line, thick blacks, and then like super popping colors with lots of like pinks and greens that looks totally toxic. That is like core my thing. Then at one point Death shows up and Death is like, I've never been able to take you, Peace Dog. Like it just makes no sense whatsoever in the best possible way. And I don't know why it's called, maybe we'll realize down the line why it's called Long Cold Winter, but I just think that it's not a great title to sell on. Like it just makes it think it's going to be like a book about like farms that are frozen over. Call it Peace Dog. Nobody's going to look at Peace Dog and be like, well, that's going to be boring. They're going to be like, what's a Peace Dog? Okay. We'll do a few more, then I'll catch up with the chat. What is Keen Spot? Well, anybody, I'm making you a solemn vow that I'm not buying any Keen Spot comics until there's at least one person in the chat or the comments that can tell me what Keen Spot is and has actually read a Keen Spot comic, okay? I'm putting it all on the line. Then I'll start actually trying to track them down digitally. Until then, I truly don't know what they are. They could just be putting out covers for all I know. Okay, Turtles of Grayskull. Look, I'm just trying to catch up on normal Ninja Turtles. I don't have time for Ninja Turtle Toyetic mashups yet. We'll get there eventually. Sweet Paprika open for business. So I read the first issue and it was deeply not for me, but I can at least talk about it. So it's by Steve Orlando. Mirko Andolfo's Sweet Paprika is like it's titty book. No, it's titty book. It's a sex book, but you don't actually always see the sex. You do see breasts, but it's also about heaven and hell. They have like a employment agency or something. I don't know. I've only skimmed it ever. So I was like, oh, well, this is a spinoff of that, still Angels and Demons, but it's all queer sex. And it's written by Steve Orlando. So I'm like, oh boy, is it going to be the wordiest gay sex that has ever been in a comic book? It is very explicit. If there's a gay sex act you have never seen illustrated before, you will see it illustrated in this comic book. But weirdly, they managed to show it without showing any pole somehow. It's all, I mean, it's truly explicit. Things that you maybe have only known in your mind. But here you're going to see them on the page, but somehow they don't show any pole, which I think is a magical, talented trick. Personally, for me, para me, is that how you say it? Not my thing. But I'm so happy it exists, I guess. I guess if you've always wanted to see Steve Orlando write totally hardcore gay sex with no pole in a cartoony way, which makes it, I gets kind of like yaoi. Well, I don't know how to say that word. I don't know what else I can say about it. It's so strange, and I don't know who to recommend it to, but maybe you're that person that based on that description. Finally, we come to Moon Knight, the Fist of Khonshu. Then I'll take a break after this to see how many of you love Sweet Paprika, the gay edition. This is, of course, by Jed MacKay, but I need to talk to you about this new artist on this book, Devmalia Pramanik, still colored by Rachel Rosenberg. The page layouts in this issue were some of the best page layouts I've seen in Marvel for a little while. They got me excited. It was a lot of using the characters and the characters' thoughts and experiences to like break up the page. Rachel Rosenberg is back with these glowing whites that pop off the page and have like a halo around them. Ultimately, the action is like he fights vermin in the sewers, whatever. But the cliffhanger in the last issue is so big. And this really pays it off because MacKay does a hard left turn deep into Mark Spector's brain. What do all of those folks in his brain think about the thing that happened at the end of the last issue? And let's process that, and let's process it by beating the ever-living crap out of vermin. Beautiful art issue. Jed MacKay issues do tend to fly sometimes unless he has an artist. This is important. I'm going to give myself more time for this. Jed MacKay writes pretty quick scripts usually, but he needs an artist to understand that the quickness of the script doesn't mean that there shouldn't be things to linger on. And the couple of times that we've had fill-in artists on Moon Knight, I think that sometimes the artists don't realize that that they can take their time and stretch out how long we're going to linger on a page. They just give us like pinups. This page is kind of a pinup. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words on the page. So you would think that I would only spend a second on it reading, but I lingered because of how the page is set up. The two personalities set up in opposition to each other up there. The way Moon Knight is crouching between them, representing another personality, and that the frame is framed by his two Akrima sticks. And then his capes are kind of circling around. And then following the organic swoosh of the cape, we get another panel divider. And then we see his cape billowing off screen as he leaps into this crowd. I lingered on this page, even though there were only 7 words. And you need an artist who has the vision, because I'm sure MacKay described this in his script, but not all artists will give us that much for us to hang our brains on a page like this. But Devmalia Pramanik did, and I think that's what makes this issue great and sets it apart from other artists. And I hope that this is our new ongoing artist on Moon Knight, because they have got the stuff. All right, let's see what the chat has been talking about. We're only at M, so we got to keep going. Luck was on. Oh, we already talked about that, Jacob. Besides Local Man and Blood Squad, has there been any good series attempting to riff off of 90s Image? Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, Savage Dragon always is, and of course there's this huge Spawn universe now, but Todd is only riffing on his own stuff. Top Cow has kind of been in a reboot cycle. I feel like there was one other book that was using Chip Zdarsky, or no, not Chip Zdarsky, he just did a fill-in issue. Donny Cates crossover also played with the idea that like old Image was canon. I feel like maybe there's one more, but those to me are the big 3 from the past 5 years. Rigor Erectus says the people who decide on Grammys literally have the... Yeah, I've given up on the Grammys as an award ceremony. I do think at a point, most of those big award ceremonies are a PR exercise. And once you get nominated, people like vote for the person they've heard of the most that year. As somebody who, if you think I listen to a lot of comics, I try to listen to over 200 new albums a year. I listen to a lot of new music. And I just at a point really gave up on trying to care about the Grammys, because it just seemed like sometimes you'll look at a category and you're like, okay, well, there's an obvious nomination to be made in this category because I've listened to everything and I know that even like the public sentiment like is behind this artist. And then they don't show up at the Grammys because they don't have the right kind of PR to those industry people. This year's Grammys are exciting because Sabrina Carpenter, Chappell Roan, Jochi, they've all broken through enough that they're actually getting acknowledged, and that's fun. But I think the Grammys are bad at that. And then once the Grammys latch on and they realize they've found somebody new and young that they like correctly identified as being good, like Billie Eilish, then they like can't stop giving them awards, which is not to say Billie Eilish doesn't deserve Grammys, but I think the Grammys at that point kind of get like stuck in the rut of having found somebody they like, and then they just keep awarding them irrespective of if their album was the best album that year. I don't think Billie Eilish's album was that good last year. It was fine, but like now she's one of those ones who they know she is. My dad got into comics through my grandma reading him Silver Age Superman. I think here's the secret of parenting. I'm just looking if I have a hair tie because this is killing me. here's one of the true secrets of parenting. Kids will like whatever you spend time with them doing, which is why so many kids like the hobbies their parents have. And now as that I'm a parent, I realize that it's not just because I'm like making Kid Crisis like the things that I like. It's because spending time together is magic. And so if you're doing something that lets you spend time with your kid, they will fall in love with that thing. Logan Wade says, not watching Grandma. He's watching me, just following some of the results online. Awesome. Okay, we'll get there. Twig and Goblin. I don't know what that means. Sometimes you got to give me a little bit, maybe that, I mean, you got to give me context. Chris Brogan talking about, people. Okay. So it was a kid comic, people recommending kid comics. David C says, I used to work in inner city schools, the middle schoolers who were practically illiterate and brought in a box of comics and they were enthralled. It's so nice to keep excited by reading. Yeah. I think the other thing is, I think comics from the 80s were very much more written for a random kid to read. So you can just go to a dollar bin at a store or like a convention or whatever and just get a bunch of beat up 80s Marvel and DC. And as long as you didn't pick up like Watchmen, if it's from the 80s, it's probably going to be appropriate for like ages 8 and up, even though they're going to probably talk about some drug stuff and have Wolverine going cocaine. Like the 80s actually were written for that audience. There's so many comics that I read now that are like teen plus. I'm like, what are you doing? What is so mature about your take on like the Teen Titans that you can't make it appropriate for an 8-year-old? It seems like bad writing to me, but that, that's a particular me thing. Good to see Christ again. Good to see you again, Flavia MRP. I'm trying to be here every Sunday afternoon, Monday if you're in New Zealand with me. It's a lot. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up a stream at this length with this much reading, but I wanted to start with this to get a grounding in what's happening in comics this year. And then if I don't read as much later, maybe not, or maybe I will, because you all seem to really like it. And I deeply appreciate that. And I want to give you something that you like. Pity Ma saying, oh no. Okay. I think we're talking about Beneath the Trees. Sorry. I'm clicking things before I'm actually reading them. Ted saying, hey, Crisis. Chris Brogan also saying doesn't like Ice Cream Man. David C saying likes Ice Cream Man, but can take it or leave it. I got that recent one with the car crash and I thought it was technically solid, but lacked emotional impact. Yeah, there's been a couple where it seems like here's the thing that loses me trope wise. And I think it's why I drop a lot of series and why I don't vibe with like certain writers like King or Lemire. If you have a beat that's supposed to be an emotional beat, like, oh, the building's on fire and this guy's dying, but he's got a picture of his family. I know that that's supposed to be emotional, but if my comic book reader spidey sense can tell that you're feeding me this thing just to turn it into an emotional beat, and like that's why it exists in the story, just to like have that emotional pulse, and I catch onto that too early, I tune out. Like I need to feel like that's really earned and it happened organically. And especially in an anthology story, if I like feel you seeding that beat too early in the story and I can tell it's going to be the beat that pays off, I will tune out. And I think that Ice Cream Man frequently does that, where it telegraphs like, here's the thing you're going to find really creepy. And like, that just doesn't work for me. It's not that I don't like the creepy thing or I don't like the thing that makes me sad that somebody got killed. It's if you tell me too early that I'm going to have to care about that thing, I have like oppositional disorder. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to vibe with that. James Abel did read Kill Train and said it had so much set up. It seemed like it took forever to get to the plot, and then did like the ending. So are you saying you liked Blood Train better than Kill Train, James? Good Lord. Max Abelin says, I'm going to head to bed. I'll watch the rest later. Oh, then Max is going to miss all my other freakouts, and we're not going to talk about the awesome, awful comic that we discovered together. Random question. Crisis, do I recommend Agent Venom? Omnibus? Yes. 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 Rick Remender's Agent Venom was great. Cullen Bunn's Agent Venom was great. The art was great. Mike the Space Agent Venom was surprisingly okay. It wasn't the best Venom comic ever, but it wasn't bad either. There's no bad comics in that whole book. No. In fact, I would go so far as to say Venom, when it was set in Philly, when Cullen Bunn took it over for the back half of that 2011 Venom series, that was when Cullen Bunn found his mojo at Marvel. He had written so many series that were like very like, what is this guy doing here? And that was the series where he like clicked. Yeah. Damn, there are tons of comics outside the big two you've never heard of. So what I do is I go on League of Comic Book Geeks. I used to use previews, but so many people have flown the coop from Diamond that you can't even trust previews anymore. Again, it's really hot here. So I just go on League of Comic Geeks and I go through the whole thing and I mark as many comics that sound interesting to me as my pull list. And then later in the week when they come out, I'll like look at their one preview page if Amazon has a preview page. And if it's a new number one, or if it's like early in a series I haven't read yet, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem like my thing, then I'll take it off the pull list. But then I have spreadsheets and stuff, but that's how I like figure out what to read. I just sold you on Kill Train. Well, I apologize, says Murph. Knights versus Samurai set in the Spawn universe. I don't think so. I think it is just a Todd McFarlane's production book because he had an idea for it. It's like based on a concept from Todd, but it's not, to my knowledge, it doesn't seem to be Spawn connected. Tit Train. You never know what I'm going to say when we get into the second hour of these things. Chris Brogan saying the Lenore I've read is fun, a Stooges comic. Laughing. Yeah, let's see this. The Stooges. Dave Sim. Oh, I haven't heard that name in many years. Did epic Three Stooges bit in the latter issues of Cerebrus. If I had infinite time on this planet Earth, I would read all of Cerebrus. I actually have it. I got it in a Humble Bundle. I have every issue of Cerebrus ever. I would do every issue and I would make a video and you would follow the insanity because early Cerebrus is great. You would follow my insanity from reading early Cerebrus to like when it like kind of peaks and is amazing and then it's down, long, slow, continuous downslide. But unfortunately, our minutes on this earth are limited and I barely get through my pull list. So George Chimchov says, in my house, we stand the Three Little Pigs. No, not the Three Little Pigs, the Three Stooges. Adam Messenger says, I worked at the comic shop in like 2020 and there were 2 to 3 poll customers in the small town it was in. All those customers were in their 70s. Well, proving my point, Adam. But that's wholesome, says Flavio. Tiger Eye says, thinks the Three Stooges is a reprint from before I was born based on the Google same title. Well, see, that's cool if they're restoring old comic books. But again, who is that for? If not for Tiger Eyes and me will buy some old bullshit. We're part of that middle-aged person club. So if it's not even for us, then how many are surviving that remember? 2 to 3 Stooges pull. Long Cold Winter looks like something I need to check out. I'm not saying it's as good as Daniel Warren Johnson. I'm saying if you bought the first few indie comics from Daniel Warren Johnson before everybody was on his dick and said like totally deserved dick onage, and you said this shit is crazy. That's how I feel about Long Cold Winter. Like I don't know if those creators are going to turn out to be as good in the long run as DWJ, but that's how it makes me feel. And I love that kind of indie comic. People think I only like Marvel and DC because I read so much Marvel and DC, but I will go down the rabbit hole with the Daniel Warren Johnsons, with the Mika Fife on things like Copra. Like I love that stuff, but you got to be weird and you got to have a cool concept and good characters. Spears Monster. I don't know what that means. Chris Brogan, the only Keen Spot comic I've read is a physical release of a webcomic story with John Allison. I'm not counting that because I would read anything John Allison read. I would go to hell and back for one page of a John Allison comic book. So I'm not counting that as knowing what Keen Spot is. David C. saying Steve Orlando is automatic no buy for me at a story in Hello Darkness. That was just no. You know, I try to give everybody grace and patience, and I've read so many Steve Orlando comics, and I've now discovered the things he's good at, and I'm better at understanding if I will like a book by him or not. Same for Cullen Bunn. I used to hate Cullen Bunn. I thought I would rage on the internet about why is this guy getting more chances? He's never good. He's never written a good comic book. And then I think Cullen Bunn discovered what he was good at, and I discovered what I liked from Cullen Bunn. And I think once you know that, then you can look at a Steve Orlando comic and kind of just based on the pitch on the cover, be like, am I in or out on this? Because I never want to be a hard no to anybody unless I just know that I'm always going to dislike them. Like, I don't want to read a comic just to dislike somebody. And that's how I feel about Garth Ennis. Like, I can tell the comics, the quality is good, but I just don't like his ideas. And that's fine. And we don't have to like everybody's ideas. A fifth of Jack Gaiman has no idea. Sorry, Crisis is super small comics they don't know about, but I'm game if I find one interesting. Well, that's why we're here. Flavio writing the word I was trying unsuccessfully to say. Yai? I'm bad at saying words even in English. This is a well-known fact. Yowie. See, what I needed was a phonetical spelling. Thank you, Ultimate Power 01. Pity Mom missed the spear cover Kickstarter and Monster, but then again, not a flipper. So they are beautiful, not sure in the stories. Oh, okay. Flavio MRP, Moon Knight has been consistently good for years now. I feel like it had a little dip in that series last year when he was dead, because it was kind of like just turning into a pinup comic book about all the cast other than him. And the speed of McKay's scripts was getting to me, but we're back, baby. We're back. Fifth of Jack Gaming loved Moon Knight, stole the top spot. Yeah, it was pretty damn good. I was watching Fifth of Jack. You should go to his channel. He needs more viewers. Come on, y'all. And like, tell him what you like about his videos and stuff. He comes with like a stack of physical comics. So he does this, but with physical comics, and he like holds them each up and he talks about like if he liked them or not. And then he like power ranks that week's polls live. What a cool concept. Like, not a lot of people are doing that and like actually engaging with the physical comics. So go, his channel is that, A Fifth of Jack Gaming. Go and check out his videos, and I will remember to link next time I do a community post. Doom Force is a ripoff, but kind of a mockery of 90s Image. So that's another one, Doom Force. Okay. We'll pass in Orlando and stick to my Gengura Tagame. Thank you very much. Dutch and Bloodshot Squeven is by Joe Casey is very 90s, which is the point, All right, I've got to get back to the books. David's, I'll do one more Logan Wayne. Some award shows have been given out on pre-show, I think. Thought to shout out to Chapel for advocating for trans rights. Trans rights are human rights, y'all. And if you don't truly believe that in your soul, get right with it. People just want to be who they are in the world. And there's a way to acknowledge that for every human being without taking rights away for anybody else. And that is a position I will always hold. And if you don't like it, unclick the subscribe button. Okay. Let's continue, shall we? Yeah, I don't need to be shy. I'm an old person and you're watching me on the internet. I'm not going to be shy that I believe that trans rights are human rights and that saying somebody's correct pronoun and given name is actually, you know what? We're going to talk more about just, I'm not going political. I just want to say something that I observed during the elections is not going to be political. I promise. Something I observed during the election season is people saying like, well, something that's happened is there's so many voices that are thought of as conservative voices that are doing cool media stuff for people to watch. And like, where are the liberal voices? It's almost like all of entertainment was seeded to be assumed to be liberal, but then people making cool, personalized, single-person content tended to start to trend a little bit more towards conservative voices. And that's when I was like, you know what? I do want to be back on YouTube because I'm a crazy liberal person who moved to New Zealand during the first Orange POTUS presidency. And you know what? Let me just be on here being myself and saying my stuff about like trans rights or human rights and also talking about comics. Like this show is not about trans rights being human rights. It's about comic books. I'm just going to say that other stuff occasionally. And if you don't like it, it's my show and not yours. So great. So that's part of my thesis statement. Like you're going to hear me say things that I believe in. You don't have to believe in them, but can we find a way to both respect them? And that's not just about comic books. I'm talking about Todd McFarlane. Okay, let's get back to the show as scheduled. God, we're only halfway through the alphabet. Murder Kingdom. Oh, I loved this. This is why I read indie comics. So this book is so cool. It's Disney World, and it's about a cast member at Disney World who looks kind of like a princess. And so the main princess gets drunk at work, and so they have her stand in for the main princess and be the princess. And she's like, oh, usually I just operate the rides. I've never been like cast before. So now she's into the world of cast at the theme park, except for all the cast are like way too in character to the point that they'll never drop character, and it's like a little bit creepy. And this is by Fred Van Lent, by the way, who remember last week or 2 weeks ago, I was saying like, where are all the Fred Van Lent comics? This guy is amazing. Why can't we have more comics from him like we used to? Well, apparently he's writing cool stuff like this. So now there's this murder mystery in the theme park, and she's like trying to track down the murderer, but also she's like, I don't really want to be on cast. That's not why I do this. But also she's trying to join the union, and all of these things are happening at once. And then in this comic, there's this amazing long riff about how like why grim fairy tales were as strange and bloody as they were, and why early cartoons adapting even chose to adapt grim fairy tales, and they realized that all the murders are themed around early gruesome black and white cartoons that are now in the public domain. It just makes me laugh. I like it. It's funny. And it, again, concept, theme park where they take themselves too seriously. Character wants a job, likes working there, not sure she really wants to pretend to be somebody else all the time. Sold. You just need an up here and a down here, and they just have to massage the story consistently from both sides. Okay. So that was Murder Kingdom. Then My Little Pony, I don't read. I'm not a brony or a whatever other designation you would give to that, but I think it's great that they exist out in the world. This is The Rise of Cadence. She's got great hair. Okay, Nightclub 2 is Mark Miller. Look, when I'm caught up on all of my other bullshit that I need to catch up on, then I will still start catching up on these Mark Miller comics that are on like version 2, version 3, version 4. Like, give me some time. Power Lords. Okay, this was a number 1, and I keep asking you every week if anybody knows what the Nacelle verse is. So not only did I read this comic book, which really did feel like a fever dream because we'll get there, but also I understand what the Nacelle verse is now. But first of all, the art in this was really pretty good. It's by V. Ken Marion, so it's not like some undiscovered indie artist. We all have seen him do art for both DC and Marvel, but really good colors from Andrew Dahlhaus, one of my favorite colors. So really good pedigree on this weird Nacelle-verse book for Oni Press. So what I discovered is the Nacelle-verse is this guy who works in like IP and toys and stuff, has gone around and bought up a bunch of abandoned toy IP properties, licenses to those properties, or just the rights to the whole properties from the 70s and 80s and early early 90s, and he is trying to make his own version of the Hasbro-verse that has like the G.I. Joes, the Transformers, Mask, and all that stuff. He's trying to do that and call it the Nacelle-verse. So these toys were they were like a briefly manufactured toy called the Power Lords. They were kind of like looked a little bit like He-Man toys, I guess. They have gems in their foreheads that power them. There's some aliens, and then there's some like really creepy bad guy aliens. So what was really interesting about this is I'd never heard of them before. And as I started reading it, I didn't even know if they'd ever existed before. But this like drops you right into the middle of a fight with them. And then one of them, who's like their sensible leader, gets the little gem pulled out of his head. And so then he's got to re-find his gem, but he's like separated from the rest of them. So half the story is them trying to find him, and half the story is him trying to find his gem. And like, it wasn't amazing. And you could tell that it was a story about characters who had been toys. Like, it just was obvious. But like, it was kind of fun. Now I like the idea almost as like people doing imitation 90s image, but it's not really from the 90s, but we're imitating it. I kind of like this idea of doing comics about toys that never sold, which that's what ROM was. And pretending that they have these like decades of amazing stories and like lore and stuff, and like writing the comics as if that exists. I kind of think that's really cool. So maybe I'm going to read more in the Cellverse. There's another Antarctic Press book from Mike Baron. Mike Baron's everywhere all of a sudden. Private American. I think I want to read that Crazy Badger comic by Mike Baron more than I want to read this guy with a knife and a gun. But you know, I like G.I. Joe, so maybe I would like this. But I'm absolutely going to read the Badger book first if I can find it for sale. Psylocke. Wow, Marvel was way at the end of the alphabet this week. This is Psylocke, written by Alyssa Wong, by art from Vincenzo Caratu and colors from First Fuentes Soju and letters from Ariana Mayer. First, can we talk about the art? I think Vincent Caratu, he's like right here behind Pepe Larraz. Like, he looks a lot like Larraz. His layouts are really interesting. His faces are really good emotion. He does really good action. Like, I think this book, in terms of its caliber and the Marvel lineup, I know this is like a solo series of a B-list X-Men, so like it's not really up there, but art-wise, it actually feels like it's swinging against some of the top Marvel comic books. Now, the problem I'm having with this book is this is Quanon as Psylocke, not Betsy, because Betsy is white now, as she always started out being, and she's Captain Britain. So Quanon, we haven't spent a ton of time with her voice, and I think Alyssa Wong, they tend to write the same voice for everybody. That voice is actually much closer to Psylocke's voice than it ever was for like Deadpool or Captain Marvel. So I think it works better here, but Psylocke doesn't feel really specific to me, even in the way that she did in Fallen Angels. Like, Fallen Angels was bad. We can all acknowledge that, but it felt very specific to who Brian Edward Hill had decided Psylocke was. And I just don't know if this comic is getting there, but the art, the script, it all clicks really well and it looks really good. So I'm really happy to be reading it. And I don't think it's billed as a limited series. So I think it could maybe get a second arc, and like, let's see where this takes us, right? Red Before Black. Oh, I tried with this one. I read actually 3 issues, and I was like, wow, am I really going to drop it right before the issue of this week? But it was too bad. It was bad. Stephanie Phillips, who's not batting 1,000 with me, although I do like her grim. It's like this woman with special forces, but she got out of jail because they told her she could get out of jail if she would infiltrate this guy's like crime ring. And so they knew each other. And so he hires her to kill this woman who stole a bunch of stuff. But then her and the woman go on their special road trip. But also she's having flashbacks to Iraq that maybe are bleeding into the real world and also have like a somewhat supernatural. But it's like, what is it about? So I'm down here with the character. It's got a pretty solid character, right? So the down here is taken care of. But what is this book about? It's not really a revenge book. It's not really a mob book. It's kind of got a Velma and Louise odd couple quality to it, but this other character like has no grounding. So I'm in this zone where I read 3 issues. And I'm like, where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? I think the art actually from Goran Sudzuka with colors by Ives Forstina is really good. But after 3 issues, which is a lot of time and money to give to a comic book just on faith that it might be interesting, I couldn't really tell where it's going. Now, to me, that like revengey, crimey thing it's not my main zone the way that Heaven and Hell stuff is. So for you, it might hit more. And maybe if it's in your trope zone, you might like it more. But also it was like this one guy was chasing them, so they shot him and it was like, oh no, you shot him. I'm like, is this even the point of the story? Like, what is the actual middle of the story? I need to know what like the point is, and I just don't think it ever found the point. But I don't hate it. Like, I don't have anything super negative to say about. Red Sonja. This, unfortunately, was the last issue of Turin Grombook's run, with art from Walter Giovanni and colors from Omi Romolante Jr. and letters by Jeff Eckelberry. this would not have made sense to you if you hadn't run the run. I actually went back for this week, and this is why I'm so behind, because I caught up on so many things. I read like the first few issues. It's cool because it's one big 18-issue story kind of about Colin Goth and revenge. And really the theme of the story is it worth it doing good things if nobody will know or ever see, which many of us have experienced on YouTube. And I think it does a good job. The art's pretty good, but you could not pick this up. And I made the mistake of just picking up issue 17. I mean, they're very much the climax to a story, but I think that I like Turin Grunbach's voice in this kind of fantastical setting a lot more than I think I like her voice for a superhero. So I think I like that we have a nice 18 and done series. Maybe we'll like get one collection or hardcover of it at some point of her doing Red Sonja. I read the first 2 issues of Red Coat by Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch for this week. You'll note that this is issue 9. I did not read this because, folks, I've never read a more boring comic book in my entire life. I wandered away from the computer 5 times during one issue, not even realizing why I had wandered away, just to wander away to like get one handful of almonds from the kitchen and be like, I'm not even hungry. Why am I eating almonds? Oh, because this comic book is bad. Here's the thing though, Brian Hitch, if you like Brian Hitch, this is as good as I've seen Brian Hitch doing art in a long, long time. Colored by Brad Anderson. Love it, love it, love it. The concept is that there's this redcoat British Army military member in the Revolutionary War. And he happens upon this weird little house where they're doing a magic ceremony to try to grant Ben Franklin everlasting life, but the spell hits him instead. So he kind of becomes the Logan of America. Like, he can't be killed, but he gets killed all the time because he's a dumbass. But then he just comes back. And so now we're like 100 and some years into him coming back. And he's like, oh, well, I guess it's just a scoundrel's life for me. And then he runs into a young Albert Einstein who's convinced that he's the key to the future of America, which actually, I like historical fiction. It all sounds cool, but I cannot express to you how bored I was. And I think that's because the character doesn't matter to me. Like, okay, so he was a redcoat, and we kind of get in the first couple of issues, he didn't really care that he was in the British Army. He just signed up to sign up. But I'm like, okay, so die. Anytime I end a comic book issue where I'm like, and then he died, great. Then I'm not going to keep reading that comic book. I have to stop saying I do not care for Return of the Living Dead. It isn't one of my like core things. But y'all, this cover fucking fucks. This cover rocks. Look at it. It's so cool. She's like a zombie lady with a purple mohawk and a bat, and she's got jorts that's with a belt that says Riot, and that like pink in the background just like burning into your retinas. Love it. I did want to read this Rome Eternal from Magma Comics. It is on Global Comics because Magma Comics stuff is on it. I was like, oh, they're in Rome, but then there's like a high-powered rifle, and why is she all different weird colors? Like, I'm really into it, so I am going to catch up. I just ran out of time this week. And if you've read any of these, definitely chime in. Sabretooth Fangs of New York. This is such an interesting book. So this is going to sound like a backhanded compliment, and it is, but it is still a compliment. I never understood why Frank Terry writes or why anybody reads his writing. It's always so hateful and grim and uninteresting. Yet this book, it really, really works. And I realize Frank Terry just wants to write about a time and a place where life was hard, things were cruel, and women didn't even appear at the margins of the panels. That's the comic book he wants to write. I'm not saying he hates women. I don't know. I wouldn't know him if he walked down the street and punched me in the nose. I'm saying I've never enjoyed his writing because I don't understand what it's about. But this Sabretooth book set in the gangs of war, early 1900s New York, suddenly I'm like, oh, maybe Frank Terry just always wanted to write this. Like, it works. This is mostly a fight scene, but that works, or a series of fight scenes, because Michael Sta Maria is the artist who also did The Shadow of the Red Goblin last year, a miniseries with DeMatteis, which was amazing. One of my top 10 books of the year, I think. Great Spider-Man comic. Read it if you haven't. So his art is so good. It reminds me of Lionel Francis Yu, when Yu had like a little bit more like life to his art. So I love the art. I kind of like Terry's world building. Great colors from Dono Sanchez Almera. Like, it's good. And I don't really like to read Sabretooth comics because I just think he's been made out to be such an awful character that I'm like, it's hard for me to get on his side narratively, even if he's technically an antagonist, but he's the protagonist because the title is his title. But I kind of like it. So if you want to read historical Sabretooth in Gangs of New York era New York, and you want to see what Frank Terry's been good for all this time, here's the book, apparently. Sam and Twitch, I caught up on all of this because I am on my Spawn bullshit. And then we'll take a break. So I haven't taught you, who knows what could be happening in the chat right now. Sam and Twitch are these two detectives that live in the fringes of Spawn's New York. So it's a Spawn Universe title. Can we talk about this title treatment for a second? They have a Spawn Universe title thing that goes across, and then they have a thing on the side that says New Spawn Universe. How many title banners do you need, Todd? They're both doing the same thing, and they're fighting each other. Graphically, anyway, like it doesn't even cross the triangle in a place that makes sense for it to cross the triangle. Anyway. So they're just detectives. The first 8 issues, it was a really cool police procedural, and it turns out Todd McFarlane writes good police procedural. When you take away all of Todd's caption boxes that he usually writes in Spawn, his dialogue actually gets pretty snappy. And also, this is this really interesting lettering from Tom Orzechowski, where the letters are not in balloons; they're just like on the page, but it can get really hard to read. And he makes weird choices. Like in this panel, it crosses over like a dark, a light, another dark, and a light. And I get that there's only so many choices you have when the panels look like this, but you could have put that down here because you don't even need balloons, right? And like this, why is this across so many vertical lines? Even though the color is white, you're missing the black stroke around the letter that pops it off because it's on black. You could have put that here. So some of the lettering choices are kind of weird. This is the 3rd issue in the 2nd story arc, which is a little bit more supernatural. Twitch guns down somebody, and but the person was already dead. Or maybe it's the 2nd issue. Yeah, 2nd issue. The person was already dead when Twitch guns him down. So Twitch is on administrative leave, but Sam and Twitch are trying to figure out like why would he have been dead already? It's good. If you want to see Todd McFarlane in his universe do a police procedural, it's fine. It feels just like a TV police procedural. How many more times can I say police procedural? The first 8 issues were a fun read altogether because I got to binge them. I would say the wheels kind of came off in the 8th issue, and it never really felt like it paid off the serial killer, who is a really interesting serial killer. So I'm hoping Todd can bring it back together here, but I'm learning it's like it's like a take one thing off before you leave the house, said by famous Nazi Kosher. It's like Todd needs one less element that he usually gets to play with. If you take away Todd's caption boxes, sometimes Todd's writing gets better. Okay, I need to be finished, but I don't have to run anywhere today. But this is already 2.5 hours, and I'm losing my voice, and you might be losing your patience with me. I don't know. But, I was having a tough day, so I'm enjoying just being here with you. Let's do some chat. Zero Rozaku says, Krisis, can you recommend a series in the vein similar to Mark Waid's Kingdom Come, but better? No, I think Kingdom Come is like, that's the one, right? Plus, I don't read a lot of out of universe. The heroes are old now. I know Chip Zdarsky just did Avengers Twilight. I know Melanie on Near Mint Condition really liked that, so maybe try that. But that's not really my zone because I don't really read a lot of things like that. Okay, these are next Imaginauts words, not mine, but I will say them in my voice. Agreed that Lemire is overwhelmingly a contrived hack. I'm not saying that, but I do think Lemire telegraphs the emotionality of his story early in the story, and for me, personally, as a reader, that doesn't work. Noah Horn, excited for Krakoa X-Men Omnibus. I'll have all the OHTs and will double dip because I have a problem. I have that problem too. No, this is like a meeting for the people that have that problem. Next, imagine I'm running off to a screening of John Borman's Excalibur. How cool. Hope you all have a great rest of our Sundays and Mondays. Scott Green, spreadsheets? Yeah, my whole life runs on spreadsheets and Trello. I like Trello, but I love a spreadsheet. And if I can connect a spreadsheet to Trello, then I'm really getting off. Lance McNair, any random comics I'm nostalgic about? Tons, but that scope is way too big for this. Early Web of Spider-Man, I think, is I have that kind because I like, even if I wasn't buying them, I like saw them in drugstores and stuff. So even though I didn't read all those issues, when I see issue of Early Web of Spider-Man now, it just like transports me. Here's the 5th of Jack's gaming YouTube, but he actually talks about comics, not just about gaming. So go and check him out. Give him, even try his video one time. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's the whole thesis statement of the show. At least try. Don't just stick with the things you've always stuck with. Try a new comic, try a new channel, right? And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And then you get to say you tried. Say it louder. Okay. I know that was probably when I was talking about how trans rights are human rights. James Abel says Murder Kingdom 3. I'm reading it because it's on Global Comics on day one, but the main character can be annoying. But I like it. She's like deliberately annoying. I think that's why I'm enjoying it. Fred Van Lent, such a solid writer. Yeah, Adam. I think certain writers don't have tropes so much as they have structure that they're really good at, and I think that's Fred Van Lent. Like Fred Van Lent will never let you down with like a rising action climax denouement structure. He never will. He knows how to do it really, really well. David C. slept on Murder Kingdom, gotta catch up. Weird kind of synchronous with Dark Ride. I didn't see Dark Ride. I guess maybe sometimes it's just in the collective unconscious and people have similar ideas at similar time. Tiger Eyes loves Van Lent, so now I have to try. It's charming. Don't let me make it out to more than it is. It just anything that's like subversive about a beloved institution, Disney World, the NFL, any, things that people love, anything that's about those but puts a little subversive twist tends to be very my thing. News pooey channel just jumping in at random into a random spot. Who knows? Adam says I have better things to do than reading new Mark Miller comics in their 800 sequels. I do sometimes like Mark Miller, and I don't want to. He's not a Garth Ennis to me where he never works for me. Mark Miller does sometimes work for me, even though I don't like him as a person, but I separate the person from the art. I'm fine with reading art by people I don't like. James Abel, Psylocke 3, give me more Psylocke being a badass. She was great in this issue. Yeah, she was cool. Tyler agrees. Psylocke art is so beautiful. Yeah, I think it's punching way above its weight class on art right now, and that is helping it seem like a better book than maybe it is. So yes, this is the Psylocke of McKay's X-Men. She literally is going back and forth from their base and in this comic book, and something actually happens in the base in this comic book, and she's like, how did it happen right under our noses? So it's very much intertwined with Jed McKay's X-Men. Vitter says the art from Psylocke was phenomenal. Everybody seems to agree. It really sells the book, especially in 3 of the female solos are about kidnapped kids. That's what I'm saying. Why are they all about the same thing? You totally nailed it. And it feels like the same. It feels like I've even read Alyssa Wong already doing that before. Okay. Red Before Black #4. Saw this series was on Global Comics. James is deep. He's in the Global Comics deep state now. And read 1 to 4, and it was fun. I love the Val and Leo. Definitely Thelma and Louise. Yeah, I just think it didn't have enough concept. I need especially in an indie comic. I'm like, why did this need to exist? Why are you contracted with a printing plant to make this happen? But some people are liking it. That the name changes also likes it. So that's why we do the show. Hopefully I explained it in a way that would let you know if you would write it. And then people in the chat are saying that they liked it. Jay Stevens is writing Red Sonja Mars Attacks book. Can't wait. I don't know who Jay Stevens is. I might need more context. Hitch crushed it on Batman's grave. I didn't feel like he was colored well on Batman's grave. It felt like really at DC, everybody colored Hitch in this really desaturated way where everything looked kind of like gray and muddy. And it really makes his art look really like static when his art is actually quite kinetic. And I think seeing him colored on Redcoat in a much more like popping way just works way better for me. Scott Green loves Redcoat. It's just not for me. It's not for me. Reaper XC says, how do I get so much reading with a job, child, very fine condition, work, social and love life? I'm an inspiration. Well, because that's all that I do. Like, I think people assume about their lives, like, oh, well, I don't have time to do this because I do these other things. But what are those other things you're doing? Do you need to do them? I mean, I work from home, so I don't have a commute, although I do have a commute to pick up Kid Crisis. I don't watch TV. I do cook really elaborate dinners. We left that off of here, but like, I don't really socialize outside the house. The fact that I socialized twice last week was more than I socialized probably in all of last year. So there are plenty of things that I don't do. And I think if you're ever looking at your life and you're like, who's the time or who's the money? Because I really believe this with the budget. Look at your budget and look at how much stuff you're spending money on that just truly doesn't matter. I just did this last week because I need a lot of money to do this. And I was like, what am I spending money on that I don't care about? And I found that I had so many little $2, $3, $4 coming out of my bank account for like stupid stuff, not only subscriptions and things, but like things that I spent money on by mistake or like like that's why I've not used an ATM that has a bank fee in over a decade. I just will not do it because I need that $2 for comic books. David C says Frank Terry Pestilence is fantastic. You know what? I remember really liking that actually. Again, Frank Terry wants to write about a historical era where everything was grim. And if that's your trope, stick to it. But Tyler, automatic pass on Terry. Adam Messenger's never met anyone who's a Frank Terry fan besides J.D. Palmiotti and Amanda Comer. Okay. But David C says Terry's a super nice guy and he's chatted with his cons. See, so, I don't know anything about these people. I prefer not knowing anything about these comic creators personally. Sometimes I get a little parasocial with somebody like Kelly Thompson, who I've like read for so long, and then I'll learn a little bit about them as people. But to me, I just prefer to them to be names. I don't even want to know what they look like or if they're good or bad. Donnie Cates doesn't remember if he likes Terry or not. Victor says, thoughts on Weapon X by Terry. When I read it. It was crazy. It had 30 issues and went nowhere. Well, that sounds about right. I think Terry just lingers so hard on the bad and the grim sometimes that we never get anywhere else. Okay, we're almost caught up. Todd was doing that in Sam and Twitch's lettering and all their solo series too, apparently. My favorite stuff about Spawn is Sam and Twitch stuff in the 20s and 30s issues. Logan Wade telling me to take my time. You say you're not going anywhere. It's been 2.25 hours. My voice is going somewhere. Okay. And we're up to present. Dark Riot is a recent image series by the same creative team as Birthright, and I haven't read it yet? What the fuck? Okay, well, that's going on the catch-up list. Folks, we're going to get to the end of the alphabet. This is our time, okay? We're just doing it. We're actually pretty close. I didn't read Seance in the Asylum. You know why? It actually looks like deeply my bullshit. but I've read a lot of comics by Clay McLeod Chapman right now, and it just never has worked. And I don't love Andrea Muti either. So this was one where I'm like, at a point, I'm not going to give you my random $4 to sample something if it's two creators that have never like worked for me, even if they are on my trope. The seasons. Okay, we're going to have to get into this. This is Rick Remender, and I have discovered that the only Rick Remender comic book I like is Uncanny X-Force. You can now name all the Rick Remender comics you like. I guarantee you my answer is I don't like them, except for Venom, Agent Venom. So this book is at war with itself. In the end note, Remender says it's supposed to be a whimsical Miyazaki style world. And he sells, and like Tintin. And he really sells that. The whole issue, double size, is about this girl who's also delivers mail, and she loses an envelope that's meant to be delivered to her. So of course she has to deliver it, but she has to deliver it just like anybody else's mail. And she chases the letter. It is, of the 40 pages, easily 30 pages of her following this letter as it blows around the town, which is very whimsical. But why do I care? Why do I care about this character in the letter blowing around? Then in the solicit, it says this is boundary breaking horror. So like, remember, which is it? Is it boundary break? Your whole end note is about how this is like Miyazaki and it's like cute core. And then your whole solicit and also the tone of the cover is about how it's hard. Now, I kind of like it that these four sisters are like unusual, slightly supernatural sisters. This one can talk to animals and chase letters apparently, and their parents died, but maybe they didn't die. Maybe they're missing. And the cover is really spooky, but then the interior wasn't really spooky. So like, it's hard out there for indie comics. I felt like it was actually pretty charming, but because it didn't really keep its promise and because it spent 30 pages on this character that I didn't know if I cared about or not, chasing a letter around, just on principle, I'm dropping it because it made me angry. Silverhawk. So I had all these toys. I think Monstar was the villain of every play that I did of like every group of toys, every fight they ever had, because Monstar was such a cool villain. This is written by Ed Brazon, art by George Kambadius, and colors by Ellie Wright. This was interesting. It starts with an origin of the Silverhawks before they're Silverhawks, but it gives you the origin of the whole universe, this really cool origin of the city that they're in Bedlama City, and what the Silverhawks used to be before the version of them we know from the cartoon. You don't have to have known the cartoon to appreciate this. It has a cool breakout of a space prison. I think it did enough. I don't think the art is quite good enough. I think I didn't start the timer, but I think that Dynamite's doing a great job at getting all these cool like cartoon franchise books back in the public conscious. You know, we've got Thundercats as well. I know that Silverhawks is not going to be the top of the tippity top of sellers, but this art and the colors, it was just a little vague for me. It was hard for me to understand and tell apart any of the characters. And once they all just look like Space Hawks in silver suits, it's going to be even harder. But I do like the story, which is that we've got to reassemble the Silverhawks as a fighting force, and they're going to be trained from scratch, and they're facing basically like a Thanos caliber threat, who's also like a intergalactic crime lord. So I like that. I will keep reading it because I don't remember anything about the cartoon. I just remember I like this one toy. So I think it's got at least a 3-issue leash with me that I will check out. Oh, sorry, I put these in the wrong order. So this is Spider-Boy by Dan Slott and friends, including Paco Medina on art and Humberto Ramos and Edgar Delgado on the flashbacks for Spider-Girl, and then Eric Arciniega on the other color art and Joe Caramagna doing the letters. I really like this. It's so good. Like, so this is the first time that we've had an arc on Spider-Boy. Really, like, it was a lot of one-shotty issues that formed like a mega arc and through the first 8-ish issues, and then there were a couple of one-shot issues. The past few issues have been this Daredevil arc. I like it because it's got Bullseye in it, and we know that Bullseye is this crazy murderer, right? It's like, would you put Sabretooth in a kid's comic? Maybe not. But Slott is doing this thing where he has figured out who Bullseye is and how to make Bullseye despicable enough for a kid comic. And then he's got this tournament thing, which I'm so bored of tournament comics, but he's doing the tournament thing in terms of like every kid is in the tournament with the adult, and all the kids have their like very kid social structure with each other, but then the adults have their own social structure. It's cute. Like, for a YA comic, I will give you much more rope to lead your leash on, because if you do things that make sense for a YA comic that I feel like I could hand my kid, but also fit into the Marvel universe, I think we could have more comics like this. Slott, for all of his dumb BS that he does, when he gets really hooked in on one thing, he executes that thing very consistently. If the thing happens to be terrible writing of Reed and Sue in Fantastic Four, well, I'm sorry, now you're stuck with 45 issues of that. But when he sinks his teeth into the thing being Spider-Boy, being like an adorable comic, and how to turn that into a Bullseye story, it works. As we've established, I don't read Star Trek comic books, but that cover is really cool. Star Wars, I do read. Star Wars, this was getting into wet fart territory for me. Like, I don't understand why it existed. We're celebrating 10 years of Marvel Star Wars, so they get Charles Soule and Jason Aaron and Kieran Gillen back to write some stories. They all want to write Afra stories, but they're not that interesting, and Afra doesn't even have an ongoing comic now anyway, so I guess this is just for people who like are dying for more Afra. There was one story about Afra, and then there was another story about Afra. They were Afra stories. The story I really liked, though, and that made me think, and that took this out of wet fart territory to just maybe like an almost shark that you just didn't quite trust, but still wound up leaving your underwear fine, is this Jason Aaron story, because it's told from the perspective of the stormtroopers, and it's during the Imperial era after the rebellion kind of happens. And the stormtroopers, it's this really interesting beat of the stormtroopers being like, people used to like when we showed up, which is delusion. Nobody loved when stormtroopers showed up, but they're like, we had planets that we felt good about protecting, and we liked going back to those planets. But now we go back to the planets, and their kids are cosplaying as friggin' rebels. And it's like this really nice little twist of the knife from Aaron about what it's like when fascists realize that maybe they are the bad guy. And I think that's really clever. Not worth the admission price to the book, though. Okay. Then Ewoks. So remember how I was saying Steve Orlando, like, you got to know what you're going to like from him? So I saw Steve Orlando and Ewoks. I don't know about that. And then I saw the art was from Alvaro Lopez and Laura Braga, and then colors by Antonio Fabella. And I was like, okay, Ewoks, I'll give it a chance. This is set right after Return of the Jedi. It's during that horrible Battle of Jakku series. But it doesn't really, you don't need to read that series, but it clearly corresponds. It's actually, it's like great. It's fun if you like Ewoks. If you have fond memories of Ewoks in Jedi Returns or Return of the Jedi, if you remember the Ewoks movies, and if you're like, wouldn't it be cute if we saw Ewoks in a comic fighting against the Empire and like showing their own culture and conflict within the Ewoks culture? Like, they're not all good just because they're cute little panda bear people. This is that. I think issue 3 got a little wordy, and I was like, Orlando, what are you doing? But then this ending issue was really satisfying. The art was great. It was fun. I had fun. I liked the whole comic book. If you like Ewoks, read it. I've not caught up on any High Republic. It was just too much. There's too much. Who's buying these? So again, I guess there are like 6-year-olds that really like Star Wars, and that's who these are for, because they're like YA. Because there's so many of them. I'm like, how much money do these 6-year-olds have? So there was Star Wars High Republic issue 14. Then there was Star Wars High Republic Adventures one-shot 2025 annual. Then there was Star Wars High Republic Adventures a century before the Acolyte, the Saber for Hire returns dispatches from the Occlusion Zone. And then there's Star Wars The High Republic Adventures Rod of Ages on Earth a century before the Acolyte Echoes of Fear. God bless these kids who like Star Wars, because they're eating. You know what? Storm fans didn't really eat this week, because what the fuck was this comic book about? Storm Life Dream. It was supposed to be kind of like one of these like voices specials, lots of creators, but it was, I mean, credit where it's due. This group of creators found a way to like hang a story on this random jam issue where it kind of like makes sense through the prologue and the chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. But it was all pretty bad. It's like these people in the future decide they select Storm for like intergalactic Wikipedia reference. So they're going to download one part of her memory from her in the 616, but then there's a glitch in the memory. And so Storm has to fight a version of herself in the computer, which is called Blue, which made me think it was going to be Mystique or something, but it's just called Blue. But then she wins against herself. The end. You don't need to read it. Next, we have String. Oh, here's another page from that. It was fine. Here's String. This is such a strange comic book. It's by Paul Tobin with art from Carlos Javier Oliveras and colors from Sarah Coella. I like the colors a lot. Letters from Taylor Esposito. That guy must have more hours in his day than me. So it's about this young woman who can see two kinds of strings coming out of people. A string that looks blue to everybody they've ever had sex with, and a string that's black to everybody they've ever murdered. Some people have both. They live a really full life. And so she gets called in for police investigations occasionally, and she gets called in for this particular investigation. And so they're investigating. I like the concept. I like the art. I think that Paul Tobin is giving us so much exposition. Like every time one of them is like, what happens if people murdered a dog? Can you see it? And then the woman explains it for like 5 pages. So if you want some lore dump about this Strings power, yes. And also, it's like a little obsessed with sex, but not super obsessed with sex. So it's not like explicit like a Mirka Andolfo comic, but there's a lot of like, and that was what the sex was like. So that's kind of like weird. I'm like, it's not, because it's not like a titillating comic book, but some of the dialogue is titillating in an expository way. I don't know. I'm reading it because I like the concept a lot, and I like the idea that just for this one woman, as she's walking around in the street, she's just seeing these people connected and strung along to other people. And of course, if you see somebody walking down the street with a black string and it means they murdered somebody, you're like, whoa. But I can't say that it's good necessarily. So next we have Superman Lex Luthor Special. I really like Joshua Williamson, and I love his Superman. This was an example of his weakness. So this was Joshua Williamson doing a one-shot. Why wasn't a regularly numbered issue? Because we're on a number 5 week of the month, and they wanted to just put out a one-shot that might sell. It was art from Eddie Barrows and Eber Ferreira, who are both great. Colors by Adriano Lucas, one of my favorite colorists. Letters by Dave Sharp. It really doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't do anything. Basically, Lex Luthor maybe has remembered a little bit of his memories that he lost at the end of House of Brainiac when he was being selfless. And that's it. That's this comic. Maybe he's got some memories back. It has this thing about him flashing back to playing music as a kid and his father abusing him, whatever. The thing that confused me is Joshua Williamson wrote House of Brainiac, and he was a major collaborator in Absolute Power, and he writes this. And there's an inference that Mr. Terrific was working with Lex Luthor before the DC All-In Special to figure out the secret of communicating with Absolute DC Earth. So they actually refer to that as an Elseworld on panel here, except for that can't have been the case because that Earth didn't happen until after Absolute Power, and House of Brainiac happens before Absolute Power. And we know this because the Absolute Power tie-ins in Superman were after House of Brainiac. So I'm sure Josh Williamson has a reason, like he knows what he's doing. He's a good author, but it was very confusing to read, and nothing really happened. So I kind of just felt like milked to buy this extra issue that didn't even, the Superwoman one shot from a couple months ago actually told a funny Superwoman story, and it like gave me more context than I had in the main series about Superwoman. This just kind of was there. So I've been waiting and waiting to catch up on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Jason Aaron. And I'm finally there, and I caught up on it this morning as I was freaking out about not being ready for the stream and breaking my guitar string. This is good Turtles. You can jump onto this without having read any Ninja Turtles before. This actually could have easily been the number 1 issue. You could just jump on with issue 6. Issues 1 through 4 explores the status quo of each of the Turtles individually. And in the past, IDW would have done them each as a one-shot, but I think they just wanted the heat of Aaron starting the book and having Aaron on the book. They've each had a different artist. They all work read individually. Just read the one of the Turtle that you like. Then issue number 5 kind of was a heavy focus on the villain. That's the only reason this isn't in my top 25 or my top 10 power rankings for this week. The villain issue is just kind of soft. It didn't feel very specific, and it didn't feel like a very memorable villain. But what I love is that this is not a recognizable version of Aaron. I'm not recognizing his normal tropes and tics, and this issue is the first issue that all 4 Turtles were really together, and I really liked it. It was fun. Of course, they're bickering. We can't start out with them all liking each other, but this also had art by Juan Ferreira, who is like an amazing artist. I would love it if he was the ongoing artist. I don't know if this book has an ongoing artist. It's been somebody different every time. Great, just great fun. Great Turtles. Slightly mature in that it doesn't feel like totally kid toyetic Turtles, but not mature readers. Mature. Really great comic book. I'm sure as it continues, it will be rising in my rankings. I just didn't love the last issue that much. Oh, and I mean, the interior art is just incredible. It's just totally amazing. But again, I don't know who the ongoing artist is. We've had, I think, 6 different artists in 6 issues. I'm not reading the last Ronin Turtleverse. I don't care. It's an alternate future. I know it's acclaimed. I know everybody likes it. It's not my thing. I just saw this on League, and it's 3 of 3, so I guess I'll never have a chance to read it. I don't even know where to get it. It's called The Termite Mound, and this is what I mean when I like deeply weird indie comics. I see this, and I'm like, I'll read that. Like, to me, this is just instantly interesting. I don't know why. There's just something about it that calls to me. Thundercats, I actually read the first 5 issues last year, I think, because I did a Thundercats guide and I was doing it was so bad. I don't like Declan Shalvey's writing. He's very quickly becoming I won't even look at it, right? How do you have a property as good as Thundercats with as many cool characters and as much cool continuity and make it so I can't even say it's like dumb or boring. It's like beige. It's like paint drying the comic book. So I dropped it. Maybe it got good. If it got good, tell me. Here's another one of these Antarctic Press books. It's part of their Superverse, Tomorrow Girl. Okay. Ultimate X-Men is the one in continuity book from Marvel that I don't read. Vampirella, I don't need a minute. I don't know. Christopher Priest is weird. He's a strange guy. It's a strange guy. This has Draculina, who I still don't understand who she is because I just picked this up a couple of issues ago, in the Dark Universe, which is just pencils and inks. It's weird. I think next issue starts a new arc. And here's the thing. Vampirella should just be fun. And Christopher Priest is still weirdo. And I guess it makes me wonder, is there anybody like me who's buying it because they want to read cool Vampirella stories? Or are they just buying it because they like looking at her in costume? Or are they just buying it because Christopher Priest is weird? Like, I want to know what part of the pie chart of the people buying this book are people buying it because they really actually like Vampirella. I don't know. Then, speaking of vampire, if I could have found this digital, I would have read it. Rockabilly Vampiro Apocalypse. And he's chained to the back of a Cadillac and is by some kind of crazy nun, and his guitar's in the back seat. I would love this, but I couldn't find it. Victor Crowley's Hatchet Midnight Murders. Deeply not for me. If you have a decapitated person on your cover, that comic book's probably not for me. It might be good. That's just not my thing. Violator. Okay, we got to talk about this. I have to share some news with you about this. This comic book. So Todd's nowhere in sight. The dad's away. Todd father's away, and the children will play. It's by Mark Andreyko. It is cool. It is really cool. And every issue is a single one-shot story, double length, like 50 issues, told from some part of Violator's past on Earth, and all of different artists, and they're all totally self-contained. The first issue, I like my Heaven and Hell stuff. It's about the original war in heaven that led to the fall of Lucifer, but it tells us like who Violator was in that. The art was amazing. It was so cool. Then the second issue, he's in like 1300s France was one of them. Then there was another one between that, like Plague Ages. Oh no, he's in the 700s and he gets unfrozen like from where he's been all this time. So it's like his and he meets a Spawn for the first time. Then there's a 1300s France where he encounters angels on Earth again for the first time. Then last issue was in Rasputin or Russia, and he kind of learns that he can exist in the modern day. And then this issue, he gets in a big argument with Lucifer during Nazi era Germany, and he's pretending to be different Nazis so he can kill and eat Nazis. Love it. My one complaint is that I think that the artist on this issue, who I love, Kevin Maguire, is a little too clean. Like, this great art, but it's a little too pretty. All of the previous issues of this, the art has been like dirty. It's been grungy. And I really like that because it works for Violator. This issue is just a little pretty, but I've legitimately loved every issue of this comic book. It's really fun. You do not need to know anything about Spawn, but if you have like cool memories of seeing Violator on the covers of comics, you will enjoy this. And if you just like Heaven and Hell nonsense, like I do, you'll enjoy it. The next book is West Coast Avengers. Oh no, well, first is Vix the Hunter. I just thought this cover looked cool. I have no idea what this book is. I was like, that looks cool. I like that. With the fox, the multiple eyes, and the green. Just thought it was cool. Then West Coast Avengers. This has been really a funny Avengers book, and I keep saying I think there's room for at least 2 Avengers books, the funny one and like the mainstream one. And I like that this spun out at the end of Duggan's Iron Man, and it's all about how like Iron Man thinks that they could do West Coast Avengers in a different way. Maybe villains can be trusted, which was like a big beat at the end of his Iron Man, but it's not. You don't have to have read his Iron Man. It's not based on his Iron Man. It just carries that beat over. So they have a good version of Ultron on their team, and on this issue, they encounter a bad version of Ultron. It was a little, it just wasn't as funny because it was a fighting issue. It had fighting, and Danny Kim drew it well. Although I think Danny Kim got a little too tricksy with the panel layouts with no good reason. Like, I like cool panel layouts, but what are we doing here? Why is this one a trapezoid? Why is it covering this one? Like, shouldn't this one be on top because it's the next action? Why is this one floating here? Why did we do a dark panel border here when it's going to be so dark, and then this character is reaching for that character's neck? That's the character who's moving, so they should be the one who has motion in this next panel. So it was fine. It wasn't as funny as the first 3 issues have been, and I've really loved them. Really, really loved them. And I think Danny Kim is like doing a little too much. You're doing too much, Danny. You reel it back a little bit. Still a decent comic book, though. I didn't read this What If Galactus Transformed Spider-Gwen. I think it's the last of the What If Galactus's issues. Okay, I'm so sad that Max isn't here anymore because this comic was like a beautiful fever dream. This is why I read Xenoscope comics, because Xenoscope does stupid things like this that are actually campy. They understand camp. So many people wrote this that it would take me the whole 60 seconds to read it. So this is not the main Xenoscope universe. It's their side universe. And it's about these characters who were furries, but then got kidnapped and turned into real animals based on like spiritual power through the ages. And so then now he's trying to break up the bad guys who are all like the penguin suits are the bad guys, but he's a tiger, but he used to just be a normal furry. But the penguin's plan is that he's going to take over Hollywood and hijack the Oscars and make them all have sex with each other. But 50 Cent figures out the plan. So he teams up with White Tiger. And then we have a flashback of all the things White Tigers have been responsible for in history. It was White Tiger that pulled the trigger, ending the life of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It was a White Tiger that mauled the Kennedys on the fateful day in Dallas, Texas. It was a White Tiger that dethroned the king, Elvis, before his prophecy returned. That's so deeply stupid. The art was really good by Unai de Zarate, and the colors by Juan Manuel Rodriguez. If you like campy nonsense, like just total B-movie crazy talk, this comic was that, and I laughed so hard the entire time. Like, the thing was, the artwork, the writing work, the pacing work, it was bad. I mean, it was bad, but it was bad in a way that it never didn't make sense. There was never a page where I couldn't make out the action. There's never a line of dialogue that didn't read right. It was just bad because it was campy and terrible. It wasn't bad because the execution was bad. And that's the kind of bad comic book I would like. And if you have lasted this long, 3 hours, I'm so sorry. It's better than whatever I would have been doing by myself today without you. Now we get to talk about X-Men by Jed MacKay. This was, I'm shocked and appalled to tell you, a good issue of X-Men. And I'll tell you why it was a good issue of X-Men. Jed MacKay's a big X-Men fan. And sometimes I think X-Men, that can hurt you. But here, he's doing a Cyclops that remembers E is for execution. The Cyclops remembers the legacy virus. He remembers the House of M, No More Mutants. He remembers Messiah Complex. He remembers Utopia and what he tried to do there. He remembers being on the Extinction Team. He remembers what he sacrificed during AVX trying to do the right thing. He remembers being a revolutionary in Bendis's X-Men. He remembers what they had in Krakoa, what they lost. And he's saying, I am done believing your nice words about what you're trying to achieve for humanity, because I've seen examples time and time again. So he says, you think I didn't plan for this? I don't have any nuclear weapons. What I have is mutants. How much damage would the Juggernaut do if I dropped him from orbit? Or if Zorn just took his helmet off and exposed the star that makes up his head? This is a Cyclops who knows not to believe the platitudes and the easily disguised lies of people who say they're just trying to do what's good for humans. He's not trying to hurt humans. He doesn't hate humans. He's not a separatist. He's just a realist. And he's lived through so much sad things happening to his people who just want to live their lives, and he's done believing that he should be put at fault for the problems that humans are bringing upon themselves. That is a good X-Men script. Great art from Netho Diaz, great inks from Sean Parsons. Love the colors from First Flinch's Sojo. Clayton Cowles, easy to read lettering, especially in a page like this that had a lot of letters. Plus, love this. This Tom King could never. Nine panel grid, and then the final one stay as 3 separate panels, but it's all one Cyclops face because it's showing the progression of his dialogue with this guy that's in the kitchen. Love it. Sold. You rocked it, Jed MacKay. Great job. And I still don't know what You're the Hunter is. Antarctic Press, who are you and who are you for? Oh, I literally, as I was saying that I'm like trying to get ready and I was black still on the screen. I was trying to make it work. I was trying to still read the end of this comic. You Never Heard of Me. I never quite got all the way through. So I just had time to throw it in the PDF. It's about somebody who has, what is it called? It's that power that Longshot has where they touch something and they have they can see the history of that thing when they touch it. But I don't understand what it's about. I was trying to read it so fast. It's about these kids in high school and one of them can see the other kids' histories, but I just didn't get to read it. So I'm sorry. I tried. Like I said, it has been a week, y'all. And in that week, I did not read as many comics as I want to. It's also been 3 hours. If you're still watching this, wow. Because guess what? Trying to watch me at 2 times speed is hard. So if you've made it through at 1 time speed, that's 3 whole hours of your life. I'm going to catch up on some chat, and then we got to get going. We have lives to lead. Okay, that's where we left off on Psylocke. Logan Wayne saying, take my time. That's not good advice for me. Always an Instigator says, Lemire gets it right about 35% of the time. May's book was great. Descender was not. Agreed. I liked Sentient. He did for TKO. Definitely my favorite Jeff Lemire book. Cult Dog, they have those in New Zealand. What, water? Comics? I don't know. Have what? Fifth of Jack saying thank you for the kind push. Just try it. Try Fifth of Jack's channel. Try a comic book. I had Sprite for the first time yesterday. I don't drink soda. I think it's evil. We can get it. Now we're into Krisis's fringe lunatic theories hour. That's what happens when we get to hour 3. No, why would you drink soda in a world where water and fruit juice exist and like lemonade or tea? Soda, it's evil. It's the drink of Satan, right? Okay. So I've never had Sprite, but yesterday I was playing board games at my friend's house. It was hot. And I was like, oh, I could use cranberry juice, but like cut with something because cranberry juice can be really strong sometimes. And I was like, you could just water it down. And they were like, I gave it to you with some Sprite. I'm like, okay, well, it's the devil's juice, but I'll try it. And then I liked it. But now I'm going to go to hell. So what are you going to do? Dark, talking about Dark Ride. James Abel said about the seasons, I have a hard time getting into Rick Remender, me too, but the series felt like something special. I did get tired of the Looney Tunes letter chase ever. Right. If the letter chase had been 10 pages shorter and we got to the thing about the older sister who's like on a train and she's riding the flare and she's got a gun cocked underneath her seat and she's like ready for somebody to jump on her. If we got to that 10 pages sooner, I would have liked it 10 times better. Andrea Metti, yeah. I think Andrea Muti, great artist, beautiful panels. Storytelling wise, doesn't frequently click for me. No, I told you can name any Rick Remender book, and I would tell. I do not like Fear Agent. I do not like it in the rain. I do not like it. It causes me pain. That's my Dr. Seuss poem about it. Yeah, I don't like any Rick Remender. Tyler prefers non-Marvel, remember. Dudley Class, also don't like that. James Abel, Silverhawks #1. I never watched the animated series. This issue didn't do too much for me. Probably won't read the next one. Might try it again. Yeah, if I didn't have an existing hardcore affinity for the idea of this title, because again, I have no recollection of what it was about, I would have dropped it. But I will, and I also don't love Ed Brazon usually. I will give it like 2 more issues. Always an Instigator. Remender gets a little too caught up in his own universe and doesn't give the characters enough room to breathe. Yeah, and he's another one that I can anticipate the cool, edgy thing he's going to do. And he's like, this is going to be edgy. And then I'm like, if I already know the thing you're going to say is edgy, then is it edgy? Riddle me that, Riddler. Love that Jay Lee cover, though. Homaging Inhumans for Silverhawks. That cover, I would have bought that cover. And that's why I picked that cover. It's actually like the B cover, but it's so much better than the A cover. If you have Jay Lee, why would you not make it the A cover? But I guess it's so people will buy the A cover and then also buy the Jay Lee cover. Jay Lee is such a clown. Oh, no. He's gotten in trouble a few times for massive failures on commissions and stealing fan money. La, 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 la. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Just let me love him for being my beloved artists. Our beloved artist behind Wildcats trilogy. Always within arm's reach here in Shea Krisis. I was super tempted by Silverhawks, but that's because I love Thundercats. Unfortunately, I have no knowledge of Silverhawks except for that Larry Kenney voiced a character in the cartoon. Again, I think it doesn't assume you know a lot, but it also, I don't know if it's going to work if you have no nostalgia for it. Storm Life Dream, a little confusing at times, but a good showcase on the reason why Storm is one of the best X-Men. All right, that's a positive spin. We'll take that. Never picked up a Star Wars book. Well, I think some of them are good because movies is such a small amount of time to tell a story of a whole galaxy far, far away. And I think that the main Star Wars title from 2015 to present is very worth reading. Aaron's was great. Gillen, Pack, Soul, it was all great. I think a lot of the Darth Vader titles, I think in a movie, Darth Vader doesn't have room to be nuanced. He's just got to be the dun, 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 dun guy, you know? So I think but then sometimes I think there's just too many Star Wars. And I know it's a line, it's going to sell, it's like X-Men. They'll sell a certain number of comics no matter what. So you might as well put them out. But I just get tired at a point. Earth's Geomancer is here because I'm still, for some reason, here on the internet 3 hours into the show. David C. says Marvel should have stuck with 2 monthly Star Wars books like they launched with. It's completely overwhelming. I feel like it's a lot like X-Men. I think you need a finite number of books where you know exactly what they are. And I think they did a good, and then some miniseries on the side. And I think they did a really good job with that up until 2020. And then 2020, they did Star Wars, they did Vader, and then they had both Aphra and Bounty Hunters at the same time. And I think the energy of those 2 books was so similar. And I think they cannibalized each other's audience. And that to me was the beginning of the end, where Marvel stopped treating Star Wars like a limited resource and just started having too much Star Wars. Joshua Williamson doing too much. Yeah, I think that man, him and Jed McKay, I'd like to just send them for a spa weekend. I think they're a little busy. And as always, who let that IDW logo happen, that new one? I don't know if I could get back to it fast enough to show it, but it's there's something truly wrong with whatever designer designed it, and then whoever approved it. Why would you approve it? I'm going to share my screen one more time because it's so bad that we all need to appreciate how bad it is. Here. So do you see this? Do you see how it's like an I and then it's a D, but then the beneath of those letters is a W, but nobody's ever going to look at that and see a W. So everybody just looks at ID. Why? That's bad. As somebody who used to manage graphic designers, that is bad graphic design. Adam Messenger ran into an editorial continuity error in Justice League Unlimited and Aquaman. JU3 said it takes place before Aquaman, but Aquaman 1 took place directly after the All-In. Well, like kind of directly after, but like how directly after? I think they're generally doing a good job of trying to balance these like 6 or 7 books that are all happening in the same space, but it's not as good. They're not as well continuity balanced as the X-Men books tend to be. James Abel, Thundercats 12. Chitara knows how to make a training room hot. Been enjoying the series a lot. Well, there you go. Ultimate X-Men. Not sure about this issue. I was surprised to see the references to Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Black Panther. Yeah, it often feels like Ultimate X-Men doesn't exist in the same world as them, but it does, and it is happening in the same world as them, but it just feels like something totally else happening. Fifth of Jack is loving Thundercats, but is a huge Thundercats fan, so that could explain. But I'm a huge Thundercats fan, and it's not working for it. Just, I read the first fusion, and it just felt so like basic. Like we know who these characters are, which is not to say you don't have to reintroduce us to them or like do an origin for them, but like why are we having this book? Like, what is the cool, compelling thing? And I read a lot of old Thundercats when I did my guide, and so many older Thundercats books, I read them like, yeah, that's a cool idea for what to do with Thundercats, and I just don't get that from this run, but that's fine. Waiting for hardcover Vampirella by Priest Omni series to come out one day. Well, Dynamite's not very good at putting out hardcovers, so we could be all waiting a long time. Jake 13 says a little from column A, a little from column B. Who knows what I'm talking about there, but we like things from both columns. David C. dropped West Coast Avengers. Well, this was not going to be the issue to get you back if you already dropped it. I'll say that. James Abel, what if Galactus transformed Spider-Gwen? This wasn't bad. It's Spider-Gwen meets D&D, but has an ending that feels incomplete, like the writer had a bigger story to tell. I'll tell you, when I catch up to Present on this comments, the stream will end. So if you have more things to say, get them in now. John Romeo Guetta, hello, my friend. Late, but managed to make it anyways. Hopefully I'm doing great. I wasn't doing great at the beginning of the stream, but I've been talking for so long that I've forgotten why. Rigor Erectus needs to read this. I hope you're talking about White Tiger, because it was so White Tiger got Kennedy. It all makes sense now. It takes a lot to make me laugh out loud. I'm the kind of person who says laugh out loud, but I don't laugh out loud. I was cackling at how stupid White Tiger was. Truly cackling. James Abel, X-Men 10. Interesting idea. Feel like the backdoor pilot for Hellions by. Oh, yeah. I was like, ooh, we're getting a second team and they're doing cool stuff and Boom Boom's on the team. Sold. Deeply sold. Renzo Novatore, who I don't think I've said hello to yet this episode. Hello. Like the portrayal of Cyclops this issue. Me too. I think Jed McKay, it's taken 10 issues, which is more runway than most writers would get, but I do think he has found the point, finally, of this comic book. Victor, the Bedlam Brothers, a new rival star Locust. Yeah, a new rival star Locust. What does that mean? What is new rivals? I didn't know who Locust was. But, there's so many X-Men. Sometimes I forget, and then I remember later that I know where they're from, but I didn't know where Locust was from. You can tell I've been doing this a long time because I can't even speak anymore. McKay's Cyclops is so on point, says Tyler, but McKay's Magneto is so off, I agree, by the same amount. Zero Zaku says X-Men issue 10 almost made me cry. It was so good. Yes, we love good X-Men comic books. We're always hoping for good X-Men comic books. Jean-Remy Argueta says Tom King still catching strays. That's right, Jean-Remy. Never stops. I will never let up. Always got some stray bullets to fire that way towards the war criminal. Adam S. Messenger says I didn't have time to read 2,000 pages of comics in a week. Shock. So they're about 22 pages each, and I read about 43. I only had time to read like 800 pages. That's nothing. And plus I did a lot of catch-up reading too, so who knows? It was a lot. But also this was a stressful week. Kid Crisis to start her new school, her old school, not to like dox myself, but not to Dawn of X myself. I could pick up a terrible book in this room and frisbee it out my window and hit her primary school. It's that close, but she graduated from primary school. Now she goes to middle school and it's pretty far away. So our life is whole topsy-turvy, upside down. And I'm having to like meet new people and like be personable and like meet parents and explain that I'm from Philadelphia. It's a lot. And then I do that same thing on the stream. John Miyagi said, true, soda is evil, Beelzebub juice. So now we're getting real. I've gone totally when I'm off my rocker. The electric, adorable Brent Hogan is laid up in bed with COVID. Oh, that sucks. I'm so sorry. Enjoyed every minute of this. I knew nothing about current single issues. Well, I don't know anything about them either, but that doesn't stop me talking about them. James Abel haven't had soda or pop for over 10 years. Water all the way. Good. I'm glad that I'm not totally crazy. I'll save that story for another time. Logan Wayne, I have the Hoxpox trade, the Hickman Omnibus, and the Inferno trade, none of which he's read yet. Do I really need to read X of Swords, or can I get by without it because it doesn't sound appealing to me? Well, if it doesn't sound appealing to you, it doesn't sound appealing to you. But X of Swords is what explains why Arakko exists, which explains the first Hellfire Gala, which explains Planet X, or whatever it's called, Planet-Size X-Men, which explains all of Al Ewing's X-Men Red. But you don't have to read them. Like, pick up a comic book and just love it. If you haven't read all that, you'll just pick up Al Ewing's X-Men Red and you'll still like it because it was great. But that's what X of Swords kicks off. It's like really the first big story engine that happens during Krakoa. David C. Moody's work in Rebels, written by Brian Wood, is out. Brian Wood, why did you have to? I don't want to know about creators being assholes because I enjoyed Brian Wood comic books and then I had to know he was an asshole. Cancel Peter. How do I not remember? Here's the thing. When I say I don't like somebody, it's never a mean thing. I'm not saying unless I'm being mean. It's not meant to be bad. It's like, I have a very particular brain. It's a little neuroatypical. It's also a little OCD. Truly. It's also just a little off of center. And certain creators have a way that they break a story that just doesn't work for me. Same for certain musicians, certain TV shows. I'm just programmed a very peculiar way. And I've learned that. And I like that you all will go down these rabbit holes with me, even though I know that very few of you are programmed the same way as me. Zach Rabaroff, fantastic writer. He writes frequently for the Comic Book Journal and for other sources. He used to be our co-host, not on This Week in X on this channel, but when we were doing Hoxpox Docs Talks or whatever it was called on Faria's channel, he and I can come to the same conclusions about the same things in the same way all the time. It's uncanny. He's one of the few people I've ever met who thinks like me. Jay Lee, ignorance is bliss. Exactly. I don't want to know about it. Zero Zaku, Krisis. What's a comic book compendium that is a must-have for DC or Image? Well, Image, Wildcats. This is the founding document of Image, right? This and Spawn. But this is way more readable and much more fun than Spawn. It's fun. I mean, if you liked Jim Lee 90s X-Men, this is Jim Lee 90s X-Men, but about aliens. Like, there's no better pitch I can give you. So if you liked old Image, but you probably need modern Image. I mean, they do compendiums of Invincible. If you like Invincible, again, a person I'm not programmed to enjoy, Robert Kirkman, that's a gimme. DC, I think that Robin compendium, right? There's a Nightwing and a Robin, both of Chuck Dixon. Like, those are really beloved foundational eras. For Nightwing, it was his first solo series ever. I think those are two really good compendiums. There's going to be a new Death and Return of Superman compendium that just is the Omnibus as a compendium, more or less. That's a must-have compendium. Yeah, I think, but you know what? I like that compendiums also take a chance on like weirder stuff that maybe would never get that deep into collecting themselves. But I'm looking because I have the Lobo compendium around here somewhere. I don't know quite where it is, but like, were they ever going to burn through that much Lobo? Probably not, because it probably wasn't going to sell. But to get 50 issues or Milestone, I have the Milestone compendiums right here. To get through so much of this historic, amazing, universe centered on Black creators and Black characters, and we're about to have the fourth one in a couple of weeks. That's amazing. So I think compendiums are cool for that. Like, get a big hunk of stuff into print at an affordable price. I think that's really, really cool. The name changes says, way to go, 3 hours and gone. God, well, I mean, when I'm done the water, then I'm really done. I don't think we're going to do a song today because my strings broke. What is this? Peter still going 3.5 hours later? What a hero. Hero or fool, Bunkmaster? Hero or fool? Also, I'm sweating to death. I'm in like a pool of sweat. Oh, that's not in tune. Ryan Jackson Locust is rumored for Marvel Rivals, but where did they come from originally? What comic is Locust from? Because I don't remember. Adam S. Messenger says, feeling on Brian Wood. Dude was like, yeah, he was just such a cool writer. I loved his perspective on things. Uh-oh, hold on. How's that? All right, we're not tuning at 12 string and trying to talk at the same time. Victor says, Rivals is the mobile game that is super popular now. Well, I know what Marvel Rivals is, and I know that Locust So are you saying Locus is a original character made up for Marvel Rivals, and then Locus also was in X-Men at the same time? I'm so confused. Pete, have you talked about New Krakoa? Yes, that was what I opened talking about. You'll have to go back and watch the beginning. It was a ramble. I was having a deeply bad day, and so I really just rambled. But maybe in there was some truth. I don't know what's happening with this. Oh, you know what? It's because I don't have my glasses on. Wow, that's funny. There was a B, and because I'm blind, I was looking at the B, and I'm like, E? Oh. William Lee, Bunkmaster, did I enjoy the Rumble? Oh, apparently there was also a Royal Rumble happening. Need to rewatch the stream to get the thoughts on the seasons, but I adored that #1 delightful romp. Intriguing setup. Marvel, yes, I know what Marvel Rivals is. Okay, thank you, Christ. All right, we're winding down here. Talking about the Royal Rumble. My favorite DP compendium is Milestones. Yeah, they're amazing. Okay, y'all, I made it to the bottom. I cannot tune this guitar. My other guitar broke a string as I was tuning up for the show. So I think we're going without a song today. Also, it's been 3 hours. So thank you so much. You know, this gives me faith in having friends who like comic books. I think when you're part of that wider fandom online and everybody just wants to fight about everything all the time, and it gets like mean, you're like, do I even want to be reading this? Do I even want to be here? Do I even want to be part of this like community? But getting to talk to you all about comics every week on the show gives me faith that I do want to be a part of this community, and it's worth it to read all this stuff to get to talk to you about it. So I'm really sorry I didn't read all 60 books this week. I know you think it's crazy that I read as many things as I do, but I see this as an agreement that you have with me that I'm going to come and I'm going to know about everything to the best of my ability. And I want to continue working on that. So the cool thing is, because I did this every Monday in January, ting, that means I've caught up on every book that's on a monthly release schedule now. So except for the ones I didn't catch up with. So next month, I'm not going to have to binge 20 issues of Green Lantern, 5 issues of Ninja Turtles. I'm just going to be caught up on every major book. So it's going to give me more time, I think, to A, make new guides, because I want to make a new guide every like 2 weeks or so. And this month with all this reading, I just couldn't. But B, more time to like chase down these weird indie series to see if there's some way I can read them and find them digitally. Sometimes you can just, the really small books, like the individual creator books, sometimes you could just like find the creator and post to them on social media to be like, can I pay you for a PDF of your book? I'm going to talk about it on my YouTube show. So I'll be back next week at the normal time-ish. It seems like everybody really liked this being 30 minutes later. So maybe it'll start being 30 minutes later. I don't know. But I have to also plan ahead for when the time changes, when the New Zealand's daylight savings goes in the opposite direction of the US daylight savings, because we're in the Southern Hemisphere. So right now I'm only 6 hours later, 6 hours earlier than you, which is really being 18 hours later than you because I'm on the next day. Soon, though, I'll be closer to you in real time, 16 hours, but I'll be farther away from you in daytime because I'll be 18 hour or 8 hour. It's math. Time zone math is hard, as my computer programmer friend says. Anyway, so I'm trying to find a time that will work now, but also for me 2 hours earlier than now when all the times change. So last week we didn't do solicits on Near Mint Condition because the solicits didn't arrive in time. So I will be on Near Mint Condition later this week, I think, talking about solicits. I think that's my only streaming appearance this week before you'll see another show from me, because this is only the first Tuesday. Next week I will be on Omnidog's Vault because it's the second Tuesday. So I'm going to hopefully just take this week to rest and recover. The last week was a lot, but it wasn't a lot in a bad way. And sometimes you have to repair or resolve, repair, and recover. So with that, I've been Krisis. You've had quite a crisis today, 3.5 hours worth. I hope you're all well as can be. I hope you all are loving your comic books. Treat people well in your lives and treat everybody equally in the world because they all deserve it. And I will see you again next week.